Councilor, and I'm the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. Today is May 24th, 2024. This hearing is being recorded. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and Files Channel 964. And sorry about what today is. Today is April 25th, 2024. The Council's budget review process will encompass a series of public hearings beginning in April and running through June. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process by giving testimony for the record. You can do this in several ways. One, attend one of our hearings and give public testimony. We will take public testimony at the end of each departmental hearing and also at our next hearing dedicated to public testimony, which will be held on Tuesday, May 22nd at 6 p.m. The full hearing schedule is on our website at boston.gov/council-budget. You can give testimony in person, here in the chamber, or virtually via Zoom. For in-person testimony, please come to the chamber and sign up on the sheet near the entrance. For virtual testimony, you can sign up using our online form on our Council Budget Review website or by emailing the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. When you are called to testify, please state your name and affiliation, residence, and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. 2, you can email your written testimony to the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. Or 3, submit a 2-minute video of your testimony through the form on our website. For more information on the council budget process and how to testify, please visit City Council's budget website at boston.gov/council-budget. Today's hearing is on docket number 0670 through 0672. Orders for the FY25 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations for the school department and for the other post-employment benefits. Docket number 0673 through 0675. Orders for a capital fund transfer appropriations. And docket numbers 0676 through 0678. Orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. These matters were sponsored by Mayor Michelle Wu and referred to the committee on April 10, 2024. Today, I'm joined by my council colleagues, Councilor Flynn and Councilor Braden. We also have received letters of absence from Councilor Pepin and Councilor Murphy. I would like to introduce today's panelists testifying on behalf of the administration, Chief of Streets, Chief Franklin Hodge, Deputy Chief of Transportation, Deputy Chief Gove, Director of Policy and Planning, Director Gupta, Deputy Chief of Streets, Infrastructure and Design, Deputy Chief Campbell, Superintendent of Highway Operations, Superintendent Nee, and Director of Budget and Finance, Director Kusha. Now we'll turn it over to the administration for their presentation, and then followed by questions from our council colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Council, for having us here today and considering our budget request for this upcoming fiscal year. We're going to briefly walk through some slides that talk a little bit about who we are and what we do, and then some of the new investments that are proposed as part of the Mayor's budget package. So first, just to speak very briefly to our mission, this is a cabinet that covers a lot in terms of the scope of work that we do. Our mission statement, we've attempted to boil it down into a single sentence, is to deliver the essential public services that keep Boston moving, clean, and vibrant while we transform our streets to help us become a safer, more equitable, and more sustainable city. As you see below, I won't go through all of the individual divisions and teams, but we do a lot of different things, but all of which roll up in one way or another into that larger shared mission. I won't repeat the introduction. Let's see I need to point this, there we go. I won't repeat the introductions of the folks at the table with me, but I do want to also acknowledge some of the other leadership who is in the room with us here from the Streets Cabinet. We have Mike Donaghy, Dennis Roach, Robbie Pardo, Darlene Williams, Tom McKay, Kate England, Ann Roach, and Clarence Perkins are all here today. This is some, but not all, of the leadership team that helps us deliver the services that we deliver. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that, we are nothing without our people, without our workforce. And the folks you see here in the room today manage a team of more than 600 people who deliver all of these essential city services. And it is their work, their commitment, their willingness to commit themselves to public service that allows us to do all of the things that we do. And so I just want to publicly state my gratitude and appreciation for the entirety of the team that makes our cabinet function. I'm going to turn it over to Omar to speak briefly about the actual budget numbers. Before I do, I also want to acknowledge one other person who is Mohammed Udin, who is not here today, but he is our budget manager, works very closely with Omar, and has been integral to helping the leadership team prepare this budget. So, Omar, take it away.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, councilors. We're very happy with this budget. Across the board, we're at 193 million, which is fairly close to last year's number, about $1 million over, or half a percentage point. This really funds us at a level to maintain basic city services that the Chief mentioned. We have 940 staff positions across the cabinet in Public Works and BTD, and this budget really helps us maintain the core city services like trash operations and collections, street cleaning and plowing, staffing for street design and engineering, street lighting, our public works, buildings and movable bridges division, green infrastructure, parking enforcement, and BTD operations like signals, signs, and meters. And so there's a lot of new things here, but really the focus is on maintaining basic city services. You'll see increases and decreases across the board due to multiple reasons that we can walk through in public works. We had $1.5 million increase over last year, mainly due to maintaining mattress recycling and collection operations. As you may know, Mass DEP banned mattresses from the waste stream, which put an influx of mattresses on our sidewalks and roads, and we had to put an extra contract basically to collect those mattresses. And councilors, I'm sure, have heard about that. And so maintaining that level of operations where we're collecting in a timely fashion was critical, in addition to funding job description reviews in our cabinet and in public works, specifically for our engineers, for our highway division, our laborers, our drivers, so that we can fill those positions. In BTD, we saw a slight decrease, which is slightly misleading because there was a large kind of budget item in BTD for the maintenance of the Lafayette garage downtown. And that garage maintenance and the payment of those maintenance fees is being taken out of the revenue directly, net. And so that budget item was no longer needed in our budget, and so that was $1.3 million that was taken out of the BTD budget. But really a lot of new investments in BTD because of that, that were transferred from that removal. So we can talk about those also in our coming slides. But obviously the primary chunk of any city department's budget is people. And so we want to talk about the people in our cabinet, people who keep our streets moving and clean. I'll hand it back to the Chief.
Good segue. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to personnel. We will keep this pretty high level, but I think the thing I want the council to know is this first bullet here. We have a very large number of vacancies in our cabinet. This is not a new situation. It has been going on for several years. We have been working very hard to try to close the number of vacancies, especially in key areas where we have teams that are significantly understaffed. We're happy to talk about some of the ways we're doing that. We are also trying to ensure that we have a diverse workforce that represents the city and reflects the city. These are some high-level stats for the cabinet, and the council has been provided in their packet with more detailed breakdowns of this. There are areas where we are doing well in terms of our workforce diversity and areas where we need improvement, but our goal is to have a diverse and representative workforce at every level of our organization and in every part of our organization. There's a lot we've been doing around recruiting, but some of the things that we have been particularly focused on, one is really looking at key positions where we know that our salaries are misaligned with what even the public sector job market would look for. And so we've been working very closely with our People Operations Cabinet to do analysis and reclassification of certain positions where we have high rates of vacancies and a market misalignment. We also have been looking at additional forms of outreach beyond what the city has traditionally done, including partnerships with schools and other organizations to help us find the workforce that we need. And lastly, although it's not on the slide, the recent round of settled union contracts we believe will be helpful in allowing us to attract and retain the workforce that we need. In particular, some of the benefits that allow for our lowest paid employees to see a higher percentage increase will help close the gap for some of those entry-level roles that are so important. I'm going to turn it over to members of my team now to talk through some of the new investments. The thing I want to say is that this is not a comprehensive list of all of the things that we are doing or the things that we are invested in. You will see on here that, you know, there's some areas that we're very excited to share with you, but we continue every day to do the work to try to enhance the quality of services we deliver in every area, from trash collection to street sweeping to parking enforcement. We also continue our work on street transformation, really trying to make Boston a city where more people can choose to take transit, to walk, to bike, and that we have the infrastructure that allows that to happen. So these continue to be key areas of priority and focus for the Cabinet, and we would be happy to speak about any of them if you would so desire. And with that, I will turn it over to, I believe, Deputy Chief Gove to, let's see which slide. There we go. To talk about some of the new investments that we're making.
Good morning. So one of the new investments in safety and state of good repair is a pilot program to bring a new in-house pavement markings team into BTD. This would be a team of three individuals with some small equipment we'd need to purchase. We would be piloting short pavement markings, so examples include like crosswalks. Presently, we do all of this work contractually, and we hope that this will allow us to be more responsive and also more efficient as far as how we complete our annual pavement markings program. The other investment is for the BTD sign shop. We are proposing an optimization project there. The project includes a bunch of modernization and safety improvements, most specifically transition to digital printing in the sign shop, as well as a conversion to breakaway sign supports. Regulatory traffic signs have stringent color and retroreflectivity requirements, and digital sign printing can meet these standards much more efficiently with more consistent results. Most municipalities and state agencies of our size have already converted to digital printing over the conventional ink-based imaging. This project would replace the current solvent-based silk screen printing operation at Channel Street. On the sign side, what we're proposing is basically moving ahead with making the breakaway style sign base our standard across the city. The manual on uniform traffic control devices for streets and highways requires all roadside sign supports in the clear zone to be breakaway so that they can yield or protect people in a crash. So we're moving, the proposal here is that we would move in that direction. We would make this our design standard moving forward. And while there is a upfront cost over the next decade, this will be a significant safety improvement, which is consistent with design standards kind of across the country. And then also will hopefully be a cost savings in the future because these signs don't require the excavation in the sidewalk or right of way that the signs that currently do today.
And Deputy Chief Campbell.
Thank you. So we also have a record investment that we are planning for sidewalks, ramps, and roads. You'll see this number, $42.8 million authorized for FY25. Almost $30 million of that is for pedestrian ramps, and that really is the driving force between all of the numbers on this slide. We also have designated about $13.5 million for sidewalks and about another $28.5 million for roadway repaving. All of these line items get funneled into our contracts that we issue annually for work on sidewalks and roadways. There's a number of them with different ways that we deploy teams to repair and reconstruct sidewalks and to patch and pave streets. The reason why we are doing a record investment is because we have to. We are still trying to meet the annual requirement of our creek settlement. That is the settlement agreement so that the city can become compliant with the ADA requirement for curb ramps. In past years, we've been spending a lot of time in our team setting up the systems that will allow us to deliver these sort of at-scale improvements to the city. This year we have to make up about 600 ramps from a deficit of last year, and that's why these numbers are high. The chief was explaining we do have a shortage of staff, and that does exist also in the construction team. But we are doing our best to organize these contracts in a way that we can deliver at scale and to meet the requirements under our settlement agreement.
And I believe Nick.
We're also investing in customer service. So there's an additional FTE for the BTD permits, construction management, and special events team. This team supports all of the kind of critical right-of-way coordination functions that happen every day in the city, from review of construction management plans, approval of traffic management plans, all of the special events that occur year-round. There's some modernization efforts going on within this group, moving the special events process to a complete virtual one. There's a new streamlined program for block party permits. So this is a position that we think will have a direct result on customer service that, both, residents, contractors, everyone will hopefully experience right away.
This second position around constituent services support is really looking at our capacity to be responsive to the large volume of inquiries that we get from constituents about a variety of issues and needs that they have within the city. We'll be adding a full-time employee to help us with email to ensure that we are able to deliver fast response times on inquiries and have the personnel we need to follow up when something requires additional attention. And certainly appreciate all of the support that the council provides, often acting as an interface and a conduit for some of the challenges and needs that constituents have, and we want to make sure we're staffed on our end to be responsive to that.
The next one has to do with parking. It's an investment to support various teams in different divisions within the streets cabinet to do some traffic analysis and parking analysis, particularly relative to occupancy and turnover at the curb. This will help us in two areas. One is in our small business districts, where there is an increasing competition for curb space to kind of pull up to the curb for various services. So we want to make sure that there is enough loading capacity as well as pickup and drop-offs. The second area is to provide support for our RPP program, our resident permit parking program. And that too requires analysis of parking turnover and occupancy to see what utilization is along the curb on the residential streets.
And so now we're going to just give a quick update on some of the progress we've made on investments from last year.
Yeah, thank you. So last year we launched our Safety Surge program. This includes the Speed Hump program, which I'm sure we will be talking about shortly. That program has been going very well, I'll say. Part of what we did as we launched the Speed Hump program was to change the process that we can deliver them in. So we put some stats in here that from about 2016 to 2022, the city installed about 300 speed humps citywide. After we launched the Safety Surge last year, in just a couple of months at the end of the construction season, we installed another 300 speed humps as we began to ramp up. Over this winter, we've continued to make process improvements to the way that we design and construct these speed humps, and this year we will have installed around the same number, 300 speed humps, just by the end of the first 2 quarters. And again, we're talking construction season, so this is only just a few weeks of work. So this is going well. We're moving as fast as we can. We know that there are a lot of people who would like to have speed humps in their communities as quickly as possible. Our goal is to just keep moving so that we can achieve that. Part of what we've also done as part of the Speed Hump and Safety Surge program is move forward with filling 8 of the positions that were provided to our team as part of that policy. And I'm happy to say we are moving forward. We just filled 2 of them this week and just continuing to build that team.
So on green infrastructure, which is another area of investment from last year, under the leadership of Kate England, we've made a great deal of progress building out and building up the Office of Green Infrastructure. We now have a team that is doing work every day to try to ensure that the streets that we have do a better job of absorbing stormwater, of serving a role other than just transportation by adding planted areas and porous areas into the street. That team has worked to develop new standards that help guide our design of new streets. And using those standards, we now have about 35 project sites that have either had green infrastructure added to them or are in the design stage this year to have green infrastructure installed in the city. This is becoming a new standard for the street design work that the rest of the cabinet does to incorporate green infrastructure elements, and we're very excited to continue to see this grow in the years ahead. And lastly, we made a significant investment in electric vehicle charging last year. In 2023, roughly 1 in 10 vehicles sold in the city of Boston were all electric. That number continues to grow every year, and we know that for many of our residents who lack off-street charging, that they will need the city to play a role in providing the charging that allows them to go electric. So in 2024, we expect to add roughly 60 level 2 charging plugs and 8 level 3 plugs. I believe the ones in Hyde Park will be the city's first level 3 fast charger plugs. I was down there a couple weeks ago and watching them do the site prep, so we were very close to turning some of those on. And that is the end of our presentation. So we're happy to take questions and whatever the council would like to talk about. So thank you.
Thank you. Just want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilor Fitzgerald and Councilor Weber, and to the whole team, thank you for all the work. Thank you for your responsiveness. And thank you for your collaboration when responding to our constituents. Now I'll turn it over to my council colleagues in order of arrival, starting with Councilor Flynn. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the administration team that is here in the work that you're doing. I just received a text that I did want to ask from a resident of the Back Bay and the South End. Dartmouth and Stewart Street intersection improvements, something that I know you're familiar with. We recently had a meeting with BTD, infrastructure improvements, pedestrian safety issues as well. Is there anything in the budget that will help us on this intersection and improve pedestrian safety?
Yes, Councillor. So yes, we're very aware of the pedestrian safety issue at Dartmouth and Stewart. We do plan to address what we can within that intersection as quickly as we can. We are going to be having a community meeting covering many projects in the Back Bay in about a week, and we will be talking about how we can address the safety issues at that intersection in the short term at that meeting. That's going to be the first time that we can, publicly share our plan for that. The budget that's going to be allocated is going to be a programmed, or just a program. It's not a standalone capital project, so that will come from, just our regular safety program funds.
Thank you. Pedestrian safety is an issue I've worked on for the last 7 years, and a critical issue, the speed hump program, something I've been advocating for. It's going over well. I also believe we need a dedicated Boston Police traffic enforcement unit throughout the cities. I think that's critical. I also want to acknowledge the work of Superintendent Danny Nee and your team for being very responsive to elected officials, but also to the residents as well. But the team that you have is professional. And Vineet, I had an opportunity to work with you for the last 7 years as well, and you've always been very, very helpful and very professional. I do want to ask a couple of questions as it relates to issues in South Boston and Chinatown. I know we finished the first round of speed humps in South Boston. When will the next round begin in South Boston for speed humps?
I don't believe we have a date yet because the way we've organized our speed hump program is built around council districts, and we did 2 zones of speed humps, as you know, in District 2. The upcoming zones that will be built within District 2 are in Chinatown, Bay Village, and your portion of the South End, after which we will likely be back in South Boston. But it's a little bit further out, so we don't have dates yet for when that might happen.
Chief, what are we doing in terms of improving the quality of life for residents in Chinatown with cleanliness, with street cleaning, with helping residents take out and prepare them for composting, taking out the garbage, pest control, all of those issues, quality of life issues in Chinatown are critical.
Yeah. I think that there's work happening in different parts of the cabinet, and I'm happy to let some of my colleagues speak to some of the things that we are doing. Ultimately, I think there's elements of ensuring that the kind of day-to-day services that we provide, the litter baskets, the street sweeping are, there, that they're present, that where we need additional attention or focus that we have, that we know about it and that we respond. And so we're doing our best to make sure that we're bringing all of those services to bear. Our waste reduction team has also been working to evaluate ways that we can help improve waste disposal in the neighborhood. And I invite, if you'd like to come down and speak in more detail, Dennis Roach can certainly talk a bit about that. Some of that has been around the potential for containerization. It's a topic we want to evaluate in the years ahead to reduce the amount of trash that's left on the streets in ways that then become a source of food for rodents. We've also done work around public education to help ensure that people know how to take advantage of the different services that we have. As you know, in our denser neighborhoods where people often lack space for trash containers, we find it to be sometimes a challenge to figure out how to make sure trash is out on the street in the ways that it needs to be. And so we're looking at various containerization strategies and looking at other cities that have pursued different approaches, including New York, to see if there are things we can learn from and try here in Boston.
The reckless driving that has taken place, not just this year, but literally over the last 5, 6, 7 years, whether it's drag racing or it's scooters or other types of three or four-wheelers racing through almost every neighborhood, Mattapan, South Boston, the South End. We saw it recently in the Back Bay. This can't be the Wild West. What are we doing to address this issue?
Well, we have a broad array of safety programs that are designed to reduce injuries and fatalities on our streets. There certainly has been, there's a variety of behavior that, affects public safety when it comes to streets. And I think, we certainly saw one version of that in the Back Bay over this past weekend. But ultimately, we are in a very challenging spot right now when it comes to traffic safety. We were looking recently at some of the numbers, and what we have been is on a downward trend for injuries and deaths on our street for a number of years. That trend has reversed. We have, between 2021 and 2023, we saw a 64% increase in pedestrian injury crashes on city streets. The last 4 months in particular have been one of the worst on record for pedestrian safety. We have had 7 fatalities this year thus far, 5 on city streets, 2 on state roads. And if we go back to the middle of December, the last 4 months, we have had 10 fatalities within the city of Boston. That is a pace which, while we desperately hope does not continue, would put us on track to have the worst 12-month period on record in recent history for traffic fatalities. So when we look at our safety surge program, when we look across the corridor redesigns that we're doing, we look at even some of our, whether it's a bike project or a bus project, we are trying to incorporate elements that we know can calm traffic, can reduce deaths and injuries, can reduce exposure to vulnerable road users to traffic fatalities. Things like the Safety Surge program, the widespread rollout of speed humps also can help cut down on some of the more, the hooliganism, I would say, that we have sometimes seen by discouraging people from drag racing or speeding through neighborhood streets. But we have a lot of work that we need to do to retrofit all of our streets to reflect the best practices we know help improve safety, and we are using all of our capital resources to try to do that work.
Let me just add a couple brief comments before my time runs out. The area down in Andrew Square is almost an extension to Mass and Cass. I'd like for us to do more quality of life work down there. It's since Mass and Cass has been shut down, we've seen more activity taking place at Andrew Square area. I want to make sure that we address quality of life issues down there. I also want to highlight one final point, and I'll give my colleagues an opportunity to speak as well. The traffic enforcement professionals that work for BTD, many of them are women that are out giving tickets. I think they're very professional. They do an excellent job. The harassment that they receive from the public is outrageous. The assaults they receive from the public is outrageous. To blame a traffic enforcement professional from BTD on your mistake or to even assault them is unacceptable. I think we need to provide a little bit more support for these BTD traffic professionals, give them some encouragement, more support, treat them with a little bit more respect. And this is really to the public as well. These are our neighbors, they're our friends and family members and people we respect, but they don't get the respect in this city. And I just wanted to acknowledge them, acknowledge the important work that they do. I know many of them live in my neighborhood in South Boston, who I have a great deal of respect for, so just want to acknowledge them, but also when you go back to the office, just to make sure that they are safe when they go out into the communities and that they know that you have their back as well.
Councilor, I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate you acknowledging that. The folks who do parking enforcement have one of the hardest jobs in the city, and they take a lot. from people that they should not have to take. And we take their safety incredibly seriously. Since the hearing that you called on this matter, we've had some very productive conversations with the labor union representing this team, as well as have made some personnel changes in the office that has resulted in some promotional opportunities, and we now have more people in leadership roles within that division who have direct firsthand experience doing the job and are there in part to make sure that we are doing everything we can to invest in the safety and the process and the oversight that allows us to keep folks who do that hard work safe. So thank you for your advocacy on that.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council Flynn. Council Braden, you now have the floor.
Thank you. I've got a lot of questions. I really appreciate the issue about the unfunded mandate for recycling mattresses. I really wish we could go to the state and say, hey, give us some money. I don't know, is there any possibility they can help cross-subsidize, like they can help subsidize that? I know that I've talked to the folks from Dennis Roach, and they say there's a lot of dumping, like people who have a property bring mattresses in. Other municipalities charge to recycle a mattress, so they bring it to us, and we have to do it. So I don't know, that's just a thought. I really would like some information on the number of EV charging stations in Alston, Brighton and District 9. I know when you go online to look for one, they're pretty few and far between, so I'd really like some information on that. We have a growing population of, we're heading for probably, we have 80,000 probably right now, so we're heading up the more and more people living in the neighbourhood, and so many more EV cars on the streets. One issue with regard to resident parking permits, is there any movement to establish a resident parking area in some of our streets? We talk about this every year because we are surrounded by other municipalities that don't allow overnight parking. So what do? They come from Newton and they come from Brighton, and they come from Newton and they come from Brookline, and they park in Brighton. And because we don't have resident parking restrictions, first of all, we don't have them, and then we don't enforce them when we. It's so unfair to the folks who actually live and pay taxes in Boston. So how are we doing on that? Are there any movement on that? I know we were studying it this last few years.
Sure. So, I mean, we do have some good news to share on that. One of the impediments to restarting the expansion of the resident permit parking program has been the number of parking meter supervisors that we have. We have been able to hire 3 new classes in fiscal year 24. We've hired 22 new parking meter supervisors. So we are starting to finally restore those numbers to the historic levels. And, with that, we hope that, sometime in the near future, we hope to come and talk about what the restart of the RPP program looks like. Super.
And then Evie's done that one. I had a question just about the state of the public works yards. We've got one yard in Alston Brighton on Western Ave. I know looking back in the budget book it was cited for some improvements. I know when I go there to visit it's pretty grim facilities for workers, and it's freezing cold in the winter and boiling hot, and I don't know what, I didn't even ask to use the bathroom, but I can't imagine. Is there any expected, any evaluation of the current condition and what sort of improvements may we anticipate at the public works yard?
There we go. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, Brighton Yard is one of our older yards, one of the most used yards, if you will. There are improvements coming. I know Tom McKay sitting up there, we've spoken about the garage and just the general condition, the inside, employee offices and restrooms. I will say the restrooms are in good shape. They are old and they need a lot of updating. They do take pride out there. I don't know, Chief, do you have what's coming up?
You want to speak to?
Yeah, so in the budget, there is a line item for district yard improvements. I know that we are in addition to the garage project that we may take on separately, doing a citywide study of all of our facilities. And I think we're scheduled sometime later this summer, early fall, to do a study of that yard in addition to frontage road and all the other yards. And then from there, kind of assign capital improvements. So
Yeah, and I really would like to see investment there because it was on the list like a while ago and just fell off the list again. So, and then also in terms of code violations, I know we are we're trying to tighten up on code violations, and I'm just wondering how we're doing with the collection of liens. The breakdown of, it'd be interesting just to have a breakdown of the liens and by district across the city, and figuring out how we have a big issue with enforcement, and I think we have a lot of folks who just don't comply with the codes because they know they're never going to have to be held accountable. So I think we're leaving a lot of revenue on the table because we're not enforcing our codes of our codes. Let's see. We have another issue over on Washington Street near Whole Foods, 20 to 30 Washington Street area. We have the Patricia White BHA senior housing there, and we have Brene Brith senior housing next door. There's a proposal for a new development across the street, but given the present climate of construction, we're relying on developers to do street improvements. And if the project is delayed or the development is delayed, then we could wait 10 years for street improvements. In the meantime, there's an incredible safety issue on Washington Street. There's pedestrian crossings with signs like stop for pedestrians. They're knocked down every day. There's a resident over there who's a really strong advocate, and he says, can we not have like Brookline has one, you hit it, it falls down, it pops right up again, but we have these ones that you hit them, they break, and then they're gone, and we could replace them every week. And is there any way we can look at just the standard of signage that we put in the street, like those pedestrian signs at crosswalks that are a little more robust, because they're just not holding up to.
Yeah, we can absolutely take a look at that area and that intersection. I believe there's a mid-block crosswalk there that we've done some flex posts and other things to try to improve safety, but Nick can probably speak to this in more detail, but the pedestrian delineators, those pop-up, pop-down signs, they don't have a long lifespan. We have been investing in staff and process within our BTD operations team to allow all of our vertical stuff, the flex posts, the delineators, to be replaced and monitored more carefully so that it can be kept when it falls down, that we can come back and put it back up. But quite candidly, right, I don't think pedestrian delineators are not a permanent fixture. They're at best a sort of stopgap tool and one that requires a lot of attention. Nick, anything you want to add to that?
No, just to add that from a design standard, it is challenging because these delineators have to be both strong enough to survive kind of living in the right of way, but also they have to be flexible enough not to damage a vehicle or inadvertently hurt a cyclist or pedestrian who would be passing by. So it is a challenge. We do have a regular maintenance program to replace them, but if we can look at the units that are there in particular and see if there's maybe an alternative.
I see in the capital plan in the budget book that there's a proposal to stairways and footpaths to redesign and rebuild the Wellington Hill Stairs in Mattapan and the Nottingham Path Stairways in Ulster Brighton. I'm very happy to tell you that the Nottingham Stairs have been completely designed and rebuilt, and they shouldn't be in this year's budget book. But I would like to replace them with another stairway. The Monastery Path from Warren Street, between Brighton Marine and Brighton High School, there's a monastery. It's called Monastery Path. It goes up to cuts through to Washington Street on the other side, and there's money in the kitty for it because we got benefits, community benefits from different projects around there, and I'd really like that to be considered to be studied and advanced somewhat quicker than it's just sitting there at the moment. And thank you to the folks who did the Monastery Path. It took us a while getting there, but it's beautiful. Not the Monastery Path, the Nottingham Path.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. We can definitely take a look
Yeah.
at that in our priority list for
One more?
stairways.
I got one more. The issue, green infrastructure, I'm really pleased Kate England is here. We're seeing a lot with the change in the weather patterns. We're seeing in the winter we're getting more rain. It's more like Irish weather than North American weather. We see a lot more rain. We see a lot of puddling in the streets, and then when it freezes, it's like a skating rink. And a lot of the time, it's at crosswalks. So it's really, really treacherous for our seniors and folks with mobility issues. So I'm wondering, like, are we doing some sort of an inventory of like drainage at those sort of corners and street? Yeah, I see it in Brighton Centre. I see it in our commercial districts that folks are having to walk. If it's not frozen, it's a big puddle, and if it's frozen, it's a skating rink, and it's really dangerous. So I'm just trying to think. If it was snow, we would just shovel it out of the way, and it wouldn't be such a problem. But this so much more rain. Just to flag that issue up.
Councillor, if there are some specific locations where that's been a consistent problem, please flag those for us. Those kinds of challenges can have a lot of different causes, and in some cases it's an issue related to paving. In other cases it can be a problem that we solve when we also do an ADA ramp upgrade to make it accessible. It can be very site specific. In other cases it actually has to do with the storm drain infrastructure that Boston Water and Sewer maintains, but we're always happy to have problem spots identified, and I know there's been a few that we've been able to, long-standing issues that we've recently been able to fix in other parts of the city as part of larger reconstruction projects that we're doing.
The other one is Lake Street coming down from Com Ave down to Washington Street. When I came into office way back in 2020, we worked with I think it was National Grid. They were going to be doing some work, and they said it would be a 9-month project. I think we're almost going into 5 years further on, and the project still isn't finished.
Yeah.
I know it's one utility after another. Water and sewer has been in there, gas have been in there. Is there any end in sight for that project? Because folks in the neighbourhood are really losing patience.
Yeah, no, I know. I've been down there a few times over the course of the grid project, and it's been very we'll say methodical. I don't have a definitive answer for you. I do believe that there is a large MWRA project that was intended to follow the National Grid work over at some point in the next couple of years, and so that had been a challenge for us as we were looking at when do we pave, what do we do paving on. I have not gotten an update from them recently, but we can certainly look into that and try to get you more information.
And I'd really also like to get an inventory of the speed bumps and where we're at with speed bumps in District 9. I know there's a lot of desire to have speed bumps, especially in some of our smaller side residential streets where people are using cut-through on Waze apps to speed around corners and really make the residential spaces really, really dangerous.
Yeah, we're happy to provide that. I do, if I'm remembering the map correctly, I believe actually the area that you identified kind of near the Brookline line along Washington Street, both north and south of Com Ave, is one of the higher priority areas to get speed humps, but we can get you the details of what is in the works, and especially over the next year or two, what you might expect to see in your district. And
I really appreciate all your work. I know Nick and I meet pretty regularly. We try and get a regular meeting so we can just keep everything, keep the communication open, and thank you for all your work. Thank you. Is that my time?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Councilor Braden. Councilor Fitzgerald, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the administration for coming today. Appreciate it. I might be dating myself here, but I notice it's PWD. I have everything as DPW. I still say that. Is that this may have been already discussed, I literally, right, am I wrong? Did I see, did a change occur, or have I just always said it wrong? Or?
You know, there's other people in this room who have been here a lot longer than me. I'm gonna ask Danny to take a crack at that history.
I was originally DPW like you.
Yeah.
And probably about 5 or 6 years ago, you saw that people using PWD more.
All right, because I go through my phone, I was like, who in my phone do I have under DPW? And it said, PWD, and nobody came up, and I'm like, no, I know that's not true.
We know what you're talking about.
Okay, so if I slip back into that, just...
No one will take offense.
Okay, that's all I was making sure. I appreciate that. With that, just a couple of shout outs for the folks that work for you guys. I know in my district, District 3, your District 3, but it's also in my District 3, Andre, the supervisor, and Wayne at District 7. I went and visited them both a couple months ago, and they gave me a great tour of how they operate and take care of the streets, and it was a great learning experience. So you guys got some top-notch guys over in my district, so thank you. Same goes with the sign shop. Having worked in 12 Channel for the past 5 years, I have a lot of relationships, and Mike Devine and those guys down there are great people. So then they always helped out with us in terms of even taking care of the Marine Industrial Park as well. So thank you for that relationship and ongoing help. The street painting team with the new investment, right? Is there a new approach or new guidelines we're doing, or is this just repainting old stuff? Or is there something like, we have this team in-house now because we're looking to try and do something different with street painting and how we formulate these lines? Or is it just more like, we're just going to make sure everything's up to par?
Yeah, this team would be a new in-house team that doesn't exist today.
Right.
So they would work out of the Channel Street shop, and we would have them focus on more of the short markings. So, for example, crosswalks, right?
Yeah.
We think that there's efficiency in having our contractual resources focus more on longer lines, larger projects, and this team could be more responsive to kind of troubleshoot some of the issues that come up. Maybe you only have one crosswalk in a particular neighborhood that needs attention. For us to have that ability in-house to what we think is a pretty basic city service, we think is important.
Right, but there's no new approach. It's really just maintaining and upkeeping what is currently there.
Correct.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add to that is that we are trying to get to a place where we are being much more proactive about maintenance of markings, especially safety critical markings.
Right.
So under the Deputy Chief's leadership last year, prior to the start of this current school year, his team was able, with our contractors, to restripe every single crosswalk in every single school zone in the city of Boston.
Awesome.
So students came back to that. We want to do more of these kinds of projects where we are proactively going out and identifying those places where we can do work in advance of it becoming so faded that people have to complain to us. This team is part of building the capacity to do that kind of proactive maintenance.
Great, thank you. Sidewalk, ramps, and roads, the $42.8 million. I know historically, right, there's always the changing standards of the ramps for the sidewalks, and it has caused us to always go back and we put the yellow in, and then the yellow gets brittle and breaks apart, and we didn't test, so we have to go back and redo those. But they're always, it seems like the goalposts are always moving on what the standards of those ramps are. How confident are we in this round that, okay, we won't have to come back and rip them all up and redo them again, because that's a sizable chunk of change for that process, right? And so, do we feel confident of that? And I know that's probably comes from federal stuff too, I assume. And do we have any indication of like we're good for a while?
Yes, you are referring to a frustrating process, which happens. I think in particular the yellow tactile strips that you're describing, we did move to a new material so that like crumbling shouldn't happen anymore. We moved to cast iron, so they should be able to withstand the freeze thaw of winter without that deterioration. That was kind of a new thing that we didn't know would happen when we installed them. Now we know.
Right.
But yes, you are correct that standards do change over time. We anticipate that national new standards will be formally adopted very shortly, and we have been already working basically with those in mind for the last couple of years. So we don't anticipate that we're going to have to like go rip up things because standards have changed. We do work to the current standard when it is done. We're not required to go back and rip up things that are done within the last couple of years. It's more just, the maintenance sort of issues that you're talking about. When things start to crumble, maybe curbs start to fail, if it's an area that's receiving a lot of like trucks driving over the curb, something like that. Yeah. That would make us go back and have to fix it, but the way that we do the work, current standards should be good to go.
Great, thank you. I will, and for some of the folks on the panel, you've heard me say this before, but my speed humps pitch, I would really love if working with each city councilor, if we could prioritize a 10 to 15 streets from each of us, and that way take care of those priority streets that we feel in the district, in each district, is either the dangerous or the prone to speeding, prone to accidents, and that way we could take care of sort of those high abused, I don't know what you would write, a high abuser street or the high rate of potential accidents that we see coming from our constituents. So I'll continue to make a pitch to prioritize those 10 to 15 streets each for each district councilor first. The green infrastructure. What are some specific elements about green infrastructure? Like when we talk about trying to do green infrastructure streets, I just don't know. What does that mean technically? Like we're looking to, is it water absorbent curbs or something like? I don't know.
I am inviting the expert on our team to come down and speak.
I had a question that pulled in someone else. That's a sign of a good question, I think.
Indeed.
Hi there.
Hi.
Kate England. Oh, that is falling down. Okay. Anyway, I'm the director of the Office of Green Infrastructure, and we actually get this question a lot. We're finding that a lot of people don't actually have a lot of familiarity with green infrastructure in the city, and so, great question. So green infrastructure features use plants, soils, other natural materials to help, capture stormwater, allow it to absorb back into the ground, to remove pollutants from stormwater. So they serve both kind of a water quality function, but they also serve a flood reduction function. And so some of the features that we install with regularity in Boston are right-of-way bioretention, which essentially means like a rain garden or a bioswale, which is kind of a shallow, depressed area that water from the street and the sidewalk can collect in rather than sitting on the street or the sidewalk, and then slowly absorb into the ground over time. These features are typically planted with native plants, trees, and a variety of other vegetation that both look nice but also serve, air quality benefits and a variety of other, mental health, physical health, and biodiversity and all kinds of great stuff. So when we say green infrastructure, we essentially mean adding green space into our right-of-ways. Historically, our right-of-ways have been predominantly hard surface, concretes, asphalts. Occasionally, we get porous paving materials, which are hard surfaces that allow water to pass through them. So porous asphalts and porous concretes look very similar to a standard asphalt or concrete, but they let water pass through them. So we are now using a nice suite of porous paving materials, vegetated features in the roadway. And there are also features that have trees, I mentioned, planted in them, so there are tree pits and other things that also are becoming more common.
I was just going to ask for an example, to that point exactly about the trees. I'm thinking, I'd love more trees along Dot Ave, so how does this green infrastructure look where it might allow for trees to be included and be part of that, rainwater absorption and things like that? But thank you very much. I appreciate that answer.
Yeah.
The EV charging, the private versus public, because I know I've got a couple people coming to me, they're putting some stuff in. There's some EV chargers on private property in District 3 already, one by the Bank of America there by Gallivan, right? And I believe there might be some more coming in the future. But we've got no say, when it's on private property, say, right, like in somebody's parking lot or something like that of a commercial business, we don't really have a lot of authority over if that's allowed to go in, right? And how does that work? Do they tap into our grid and they're charged just like it would be charged in and the deal is between the provider and the private owner, I assume? Yeah,
typically. I mean, private property EV chargers are overseen by ISD, just like any other construction project would be. Okay. But the one you mentioned on Gallivan is owned by a company called Electrify America. They have a network of fast chargers around the country. They do their own deals for for real estate and then work directly with the electric company to get an appropriate grid connection. That's typically what we see. There is a lot of state grant money that is available to support both publicly owned and privately operated but publicly available charging. And so, you know, you do see there's a number of grant awards that have been given out by the state for non-city operated charging, but publicly available in a parking lot, for example. And many of those are still under construction in Boston.
Great. And do we have sight of what they look like? Because the ones on Galvin have the very bright green lights. I could not imagine living across the street from them, honestly. We haven't gotten a complaint, but I'm surprised we haven't. But is there any design regulations around private EV charging stations?
Not to my knowledge. It's a great point. They're a little garish. My assumption is as EV charging gets a little more commonplace that people will start to tone down. Right now, they double as billboards for the fact that they exist, and when they start to exist everywhere, they may be less necessary to have all those bright lights.
It might be something we want to take a look at, or just design review with that. The Hokies, I see you have a collaboration with Project Place. What does that look like, and are there other areas to partner with to fill the Hokies? Because I know we're having a tough time filling those jobs. We get a lot of requests for that. We have a great one in Savin Hill, Jojo Sullivan, who's been there for a long time and keeps her area of Dot Ave spotless because of that. So we'd love to have 1,000 more of her, but understanding the attraction to that job is difficult. What are the other areas? And there are people that are looking for work, right? We have migrants coming in looking for jobs. I mean, these are type of those entry-level jobs that you can get. Are there any other relationships or that are in the works?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Joanne, there we go. Great question. Thank you, Councilor. Joanne is fantastic.
Awesome.
Right? She's great. She actually does a training video when we onboard all of our Hokies. She did the training video.
Great.
Gilbert Costin, the gentleman behind you, the newly assistant superintendent for highway, he came from Project Place. He's been working with Project Place. Happy to report now, as far as 17 permanent Hokie positions, we have 15 that are filled. We are onboarding with one right now, but in the past, let's say, call it a month, we've hired 10 folks. So
great.
That relationship is working great. We're also taking folks from the Newmarket Business Association in response to the Mass and Cass area issues. They've kind of developed their own little cleaning crew.
Yeah, through Sue and that crew. Yeah, I've met some of those folks.
Exactly, and we've worked side by side with them, and they've come to us at least a dozen times with folks that we've hired from them. Happy to report that most of those guys are still with us, and gals. Some have even moved up to the MEO. They've gotten a license, and I can see them moving on, after that.
Thank you. I know my time is up. I just make one more plug for in the traffic calming measures. I know you are aware, this is again just a reiteration of traffic calming versus traffic jams, right? And the cause of that, because I know we hear a lot from our constituents about the roads being choked and sitting in traffic, and I know part of that is helpful given recent incidents, but just always be mindful of what that caused. But thank you guys so much for coming. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Just want to acknowledge we've also been joined by Councilor Julie Mejia, Councilor Fernandez Anderson, and Council President Louis Jen. Councilor Weber, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Councilor Fitzgerald, Hokie? What's a Hokie?
Oklahoma State.
Yeah. Okay, well.
You should explain a little. Yeah, sorry.
We all want them. We all want them.
The city, like sidewalks, neighbors have Hokies.
Okay.
Individually going after the street sweepers and clean up the streets. But they could probably give a better answer.
Well, thank you for the education. I think I got it. So I guess just getting back to Councilor Flynn's point about traffic safety, this is for Chief Franklin Hodge. I think we brought this up a couple times, how American cities are inherently more dangerous for pedestrians than in Europe. I think for every mile a pedestrian walks in U.S. cities, they're 6 times more likely to be killed than someone in England, say, and it's a place where they drive the wrong way on purpose. So, what's your sense of like what's causing that and what we can do to address it?
Yeah, and that's a big question. There we go. It's a big question, and it's something we spend a lot of time thinking about. I mean, I think that this is a national challenge, as you note, and Boston, even with our recent spike in fatalities, still ranks amongst the safest large cities from a traffic perspective. But we have more to do. There's still far too many people killed and injured on our streets. You know, there are challenges that there's a recent sort of deep dive research piece in the New York Times about the rise in pedestrian fatalities and the research around it. And the conclusion, if you look at it on a national level, is we don't exactly know why fatalities are going up. Vehicles are much larger, they're much heavier, they are designed in ways that tend to be much more deadly to pedestrians. That is likely a factor. You know, smartphones and other kinds of distracted driving is likely a factor. There's been anecdotal but not sort of robustly supported evidence of an increase in aggressive driving behaviors, particularly since the pandemic, and so that is likely a factor as well. What we do know, although we can't definitively say exactly why things are getting worse across the country, we know the tools that make streets safer. We know that speed kills, and it's not a linear relationship. Going 20 miles an hour, you're very unlikely, if you strike a pedestrian, to kill them. Going 30 miles an hour, you are very likely to kill them. And so we know that by calming traffic, not making traffic jams, by reducing the top speeds and excessive speeding, that we can improve safety. We know that visibility is key, especially at crosswalks. So can you see the person waiting to cross? Is the driver making the turn able to have a sense of what else is going around and whether there may be a bike that's passing by them that they might run into? All of these are things that we have toolkits that we can deploy when we redesign streets. Some of them are quick things, it's paint, it's flex post. Some of them are much more involved, realigning curbs, building raised crosswalks, adding speed humps. We're deploying both the fast and the slow solutions to try to make sure that we are building streets that are safe and that help keep people from, being killed or injured on our streets.
Okay, well, thanks. And speaking of traffic calming, I have a meeting with the community tonight in West Roxbury. What have you learned? What's the plan for getting back to the community about concerns in West Roxbury since last summer?
Yeah, absolutely. Overall, the response, this is obviously that the Center Street project is a very, was very polarizing when we announced it and, continues to be a source of a lot of discussion. Overall, though, we view that project as being successful at meeting the goals that we set. We have heard from many people in the community how it feels safer. It feels safer as a pedestrian. It feels safer as a driver. We've spent a lot of time, many hours observing the street, and we believe it is functioning well. As we anticipated, there was a slight increase in travel times, but typically less than a minute over the course of the corridor on the kind of medium travel time. There are a number of smaller kind of punch list items, some of which are items still to complete from the original work. So green paint started going down this week in the bike lanes. There's still some minor adjustments to the signals that are being made. There's also data gathering that we are doing right now to really get a more quantitative look on the performance of the corridor, looking at speeds and confirming what we are anecdotally seeing, that top speeds are down, and looking at whether there have been any impacts to neighboring streets in terms of cut-through traffic. So we're in the process of doing the data gathering that we promised the community, and we expect to report back roughly end of May, which is about the 1-year mark from when this project was first rolled out, with what we found and any further adjustments that might come based on that.
Okay, thanks. And just as a corollary to that, I think there are no speed humps in West Roxbury, and I know there's a lot of calls for them, so I just advocate to get to that. You've altered Center Street, and with good consequences for safety and things like that, but I think there's some concerns about speed humps.
We are doing analysis with data from Waze to look at if and when people are being rerouted off of Center Street onto neighborhood streets. And while that analysis is ongoing, if it shows that there is a significant increase in reroutes, speed humps will be our first tool in the areas that are affected to help mitigate any impacts from that. So that's a work in progress.
Okay. So I had a constituent at 266 Amory Street, it's right near the brewery, who had flooding that caused about $13,000 worth of damage, and water and sewer told the constituent that the flooding was due to street grading, not with a D, but the constituent was being told that they could not get reimbursement. What is the process that someone should follow? Well, first, are you aware of this? Is there something being done about the grading of Amory Street to make sure this doesn't happen again? And two, what is the process somebody in the community should follow if this happens to them?
So we can look into that. The way stormwater works is the streets and the storm drain infrastructure work as a combined system, and the streets are intended to channel water to that storm drain system or to green infrastructure. Those pieces all have to be aligned and working in tandem. So I don't have information about that specific location. It's something that we can work with Boston Water and Sewer on to understand what changes might be needed. I also don't have information off the top of my head around the claim process that the city might follow, but we can certainly provide that for you.
Okay. So you mentioned level 3 electric chargers. Are any of those planned going into Jamaica Plain or West Roxbury?
Not in the first round. I believe there is a level 3 charger planned in Roslindale in the municipal parking lot by the commuter rail station, but I don't believe that our current lineup for level 3 includes JP or West Roxbury, but we can confirm that and get back to you with specific plans in those locations.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a lot of calls, especially in Jamaica Plain, for people living in apartment buildings. They have they can't set one up in their driveway.
Yeah, the level 2 chargers we provide in JP are some of the most heavily utilized in the city, and one of the elements of our EV charging program that we'll be rolling out this year is on-street EV charging. Right now, it's mostly confined to municipal lots, so we do expect we will be adding plugs overall in Jamaica Plain and in West Roxbury as part of that program. But we will find out more information about any level 3 charging that might be coming.
Okay, there's a lot of projects related to street lighting. Do you know if any of those are going to impact District 6?
We can certainly get you a list.
Okay. Let's see. And then Eggleston Square redesign. My understanding is that we're like the 25% design, and maybe we talked about this yesterday, but what can I tell people in Eggleston Square about that?
So, Vinny, do you want to speak to this, or can I? Yeah. So I believe that we will be back into the community with a more detailed update to that 25% design during the first half of this year. That is being finalized, and we do have money set aside in the capital budget to cover costs. We definitely got feedback on the original concepts that were presented, and so we tried to incorporate that. There has been one of the prioritized speed hump zones is the kind of area in between Washington Street and Franklin Park, and so those speed humps have now been fully designed and will likely be in construction within the next several months, so that piece will at least be coming soon. And then as we roll out the revised concept design, we hope to finalize that and move that towards construction, but it would be unlikely to start from a construction perspective until next year at the very earliest.
Okay, yeah, I'd just like to highlight, I've gotten a lot of comments about School Street and what's going on there, and bike lanes, parking, that kind of thing.
Yeah, School Street has, there's obviously, it's an important part of the bike network and the connections up to Franklin Park, but I know that there's been a lot of issues with people parking on sidewalks. It is an area with, as the name suggests, schools. Unfortunately, some of that illegal and dangerous parking behavior is related to the schools, whether it's parents dropping kids off or in some cases school buses. So we're trying to do the best that we can in the design of the infrastructure on School Street to create places where it is less likely to have vehicles up on sidewalks, but it is also an enforcement and behavior challenge on that street in particular.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Council Weber. Council Mejia, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all. Happy to be here yet again. Feel like Groundhog Day. A year later, here we are. I have a few questions. A lot of it is more around infrastructure. I've received a lot of calls from constituents, particularly business owners on Blue Hill Ave, that are in construction right now. I'm not sure what, I guess they're replacing the pipes somewhere around 200 Blue Hill Avenue. And there has been very limited notice or communication from the city. I think you guys are aware of that because we've invited the administration to participate with our office and helping to support the mishaps that have occurred. And we understand, having been in communication with Senator Miranda, we've invited them to participate in this process. And I know Blue Hill Lab, I believe, belongs to the state, right? Or the city, you guys, okay, because there's some discrepancies who is responsible for what, because when you call, we get this. So thank you for putting that on the record, that we are the ones that are responsible for that. Thank you. So my question really is around some of the supports for some of these small businesses who have experienced a lot of financial impact as a result of the ongoing construction that is happening on Blue Hill Ave. So I need to know, one is communication and outreach and engagement processes when we're going to do construction in certain corridors, what the communication looks like, what's your policy, protocol, and procedure. And then the other is what, if any, compensation our businesses can anticipate for the amount of financial loss that they have experienced as a result of the ongoing construction on Blue Hill Ave.
Yeah, so, the impacts that have happened, so this is the stretch of Blue Hill Ave, basically between Grove Hall and Dudley Street, but mostly closer to the Dudley Street end, that has been undergoing multiple sequential major utility projects that have been massively disruptive on the street and to the businesses there. Both National Grid and Boston Water and Sewer have been replacing infrastructure in tandem. It is a coordinated project because the utilities overlap, and so they need to work closely with one another, but the result has just been this steady stream of really deeply impactful work on the corridor. The Public Works Department has a sort of somewhat limited role in terms of what we do with the utilities. We have an oversight and permitting responsibility, and so our primary job is to make sure that any utility project has an appropriate plan for how they stage and manage the construction, keeping the work site safe when they're doing work. We work to make sure that every project is fully permitted, and we monitor to make sure that they are complying with our construction standards and regulations as they are actually doing the work.
Who oversees timelines and deadlines? Because it's been ongoing and it's going to be going on for a few more years from what I understand. So at what point do we as the city, if we're providing oversight, at what point do we provide some level of accountability for expediting the process so that these particular businesses don't continue to feel the financial impact of this negligence that they're experiencing right now?
Yeah, I mean, typically with any construction project that is done by others on their infrastructure, we have a limited degree of control over how quickly it can happen, but we can serve as a convener. And I know that the city's Office of Neighborhood Services has a meeting, an on-site meeting that is being
Today
scheduled.
at 1:30.
Okay, so
with the folks that I've been working with.
You have
yeah.
the dates, bringing together Boston Water and Sewer and National Grid.
Yep.
It also relates to the communication piece. Our expectation, especially for major projects, is that the utilities themselves will do outreach and communication to affected neighbors.
How are we overseeing that? Because this is the expectation that we have. So the, intention versus the impact, there seems to be a disconnect because a lot of these businesses did not know.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out what the communication flow is. I guess I ask these questions because I'm the one who's going to have to go answer to them. So I'm trying to help understand kind of like what is our responsibility and what can we do to help support them. And I know this is probably a question for Chief Iragu's camp because there's also a financial impact that these businesses are having to incur. So I just want to name that as something that I want to continue for us to figure out whether it's more money on your communication and outreach budget or your language access, coordination, but there needs to be a little bit more for those businesses on Blue Hill Ave that are really feeling the crunch of all of this construction that's happening. I just want to name that.
Happy to work with you on improving things.
And then the other piece, and the reason why I exist in this world is because I like to have those difficult conversations, and I'm sorry, but not sorry, because that's what I get paid to do. The other question that has bubbled up for me is around some of the parking limitations on Washington Street and Eggleston Square in particular. Some of the businesses, what's happening is that there's supposed to be a 2-hour parking, allegedly, but it's not being enforced. So a lot of these businesses, I'm going back again to these businesses because these are the ones who are feeling the impact, because people are leaving their cars there for hours and then taking the green line. These parking spots are being occupied and taken up for the small businesses that are in that area. So I'm curious, one is, could you talk to us a little bit about enforcement? And two, what is the process in which someone can go about getting those 15-minute delivery signs on in front of their businesses? What does that look like?
Sure. So the first part, we can look to do some targeted enforcement there on the 2-hour parking limits. We can make a commitment on that, and then we'll work with the policy and planning team to look at potentially evaluating some of the curbside regulations, to look at maybe some loading in our loading zones to accommodate some of those shorter term needs.
Yeah, no, that would be helpful. And then I've also heard from businesses on Bowdoin and Geneva. I'm sure you guys have heard from them too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious about kind of like where we're landing with kind of like infrastructure. From what I understand, there was a meeting. Some folks have provided some really creative ways that would not impact the businesses. So I'm just curious where we're landing with that and what that process looks like.
Yeah, so that I believe refers to some of the safety changes that are being planned as part of the Bowdoin Geneva Transportation Action Plan at that particular intersection. And the city did present a concept to the businesses that raised some concerns around parking impacts. We're always, whenever we have kind of a limited public space, we always have to sort of figure out how to balance a lot of often conflicting needs about how to use that space to deliver the best outcomes. We got some great feedback from the businesses on how we had struck that balance, and the team is taking that back now and going to come back with some revised concepts that will hopefully be able to deliver the same kinds of safety benefits with fewer impacts on the local businesses.
And I'm so encouraged to hear that, Chief, because in my little short time here, we have a lot of folks who have lost trust in government because they always feel that things are being done to us without us. So I'm really encouraged to hear that the voices of those folks who have provided other alternatives, that you guys are going to take those into consideration. So I think that is a good faith effort and at least making people feel like we are paying attention. So thank you for that. And then my last, and I'm not sure because every chair is different, I don't know what the time limit is. Where are we? Because I'm good. I want to be respectful. let's talk a little bit about the Blue Hill Lab Mattapan situation, Chief. In your first week, I don't know if you remember, I hosted a town hall at Morningstar.
Oh, I do, yeah.
And
BOG, you.
BOG, that's right. I brought in the fire. Yeah, that's why they're trying to extinguish it. But anyways, I'm here. I'd love to talk a little bit about a lot of the businesses that reached out to me, mainly a lot of the immigrant-owned businesses that are up and down Blue Hill Avenue, primarily Spanish-speaking business owners who were, for the first time, hearing about the redesign, like years after we had that town hall. And I know we had talked about organizing and doing some work with some businesses, but there were still a lot of people who did not know that this was happening. And once the decision was made, my phone blew up. Can you talk to us a little bit about the financial impact or studies or whatever research you've managed to do about how the center lane design is going to impact the financial outcomes for the businesses that are within that corridor?
I mean, I'm happy to let Vineet speak a little bit to the larger planning process. It is not common practice for any transportation project of this scale to do economic impact analysis.
Do you know why?
I don't believe there are any established methodologies for doing so.
Like projections?
There's just not there's not models, right? So typically to do an economic impact analysis, you need a way to sort of say, you know, this is a condition today. If you make these changes with these inputs to a street configuration, here's what the outcomes would be. That's not to my knowledge, there's no established methodology for doing that kind of analysis and projection.
But there is, and to some degree, because the folks at Blue Hill Ave, on 200 Blue Hill Ave, the businesses that we discussed earlier, have been able to demonstrate the financial impact of the construction piece of the work that's happening, right? And so now what folks are, and this is a great opportunity, that's why these hearings are so important, because maybe we could debunk that myth that they're going to continue to experience financial loss because of this central bus lane. So this is where people are coming through. So this is why you all, in your roles, who know much more than us common people, can help us understand that they're not going to experience a financial impact.
I mean, as I'm sure you know, right, the section of Blue Hill Ave that's experiencing utility construction is different from the section where the center running bus.
But there's going to be construction happening, right, to make it, right? So this is where people are concerned. This is what I'm talking about.
So the concerns you're hearing primarily focused around the impacts of construction or the impacts of the redesign of the street? Got it. So, you know, we're still in the design phase for the project. So in terms of construction impacts, right, one of the key elements of this project will be putting together a construction phasing plan that allows us to have, to minimize those impacts. You know, when you do a large-scale reconstruction of any corridor, it does have impacts, right? And that means, you know, there's periods of time where sidewalks are affected, where parking might be removed on part of the corridor. Our goal with a project like that is always to minimize the amount of time that any given business is impacted. The benefit of the Blue Hill Ave portion of Blue Hill Ave where this bus lane project is going in, it is a much, much, much wider roadway than the section that has been affected by the water and sewer work. And part of the challenge with the water and sewer work is that even to dig, it's an incredibly deep trench that they've been putting in there. And so to dig a trench 20 feet down, they essentially have to take over 50% of the roadway for an extended period of time, which means no parking. It means sometimes it's down to one lane and cars get detoured onto side streets. We have more space to work with on the remaining part of the corridor. So I'm confident that we'll be able to develop a transportation management plan for construction that minimizes the impacts to businesses and the amount of time that they're affected. In terms of the actual redesign of the corridor itself, the goal of that project is to make sure that we are enhancing enhancing the overall state of repair of the corridor, that we're making it easier for people to walk, to bike, to take transit on that corridor, and that we are organizing some of the chaos of cars that exists on Blue Hill Ave today and addressing the safety issues. We believe that changes that cover such a broad swath of enhancements to a corridor will have a long-term positive impact on neighborhood businesses by creating a space that more people want to be, where people feel safe and comfortable traveling through, and where there's more convenient options to get where people need to go.
You know, what and this will be the last thing, Chair, what I really struggle with, and this is why I think it's so difficult for us to be a body of 13 where there's so many different conflicting agendas, is that there is definitely an opportunity for us to bring people who are extreme opposites, like the anti-bus lane people and the anti-bikes, and politicians are politicians. We're always going to try to figure out how do we survive all of this. But there is a sentiment in terms of folks who have grown up here, who have lived here their entire lives, who feel like a lot of these designs that are being implemented and considered are not for them. They're for people who ride bikes. They are for people who can work from home, so they don't have to worry about transit, right? I know that's not the truth, but that is the perception. And I think that it's important to name that level of privilege and that level of disconnect that so many folks feel right now. And I don't think it'll be genuine on anyone here to not name the elephant in the room. Is that there is definitely that to deal with here in the city of Boston, and we can't build these streets without recognizing that tension. And I think what a lot of people feel is we're plowing right over them. And I think that this is part of these design conversations that usually get lost in the politics of it all.
I hear that point, and I agree that this project in particular, right, touches on a lot of issues of trust of people. Who is this for? Why is the city doing this? I would encourage you, Councilor, if you haven't already, to look at the engagement report that the city published, because it does, in fact, acknowledge these things. It talks about these issues and these concerns, the fears that people have about gentrification and displacement associated with projects like this, the questions that people have about the city's ability to deliver. We have tried to name this in the planning process so that we can do our best to address it. There is no easy solution to what is, in many cases, generational distrust of local government, in some cases very well earned by local government through the actions that we've taken or not taken in given neighborhoods. So I think we want to recognize and acknowledge that. We want to name it. We want to make sure that we design a process where we have opportunities for people to have their voice reflected in both the process and the outcomes of that project. We are attempting that here on Blue Hill Ave. It is never going to be perfect. It is never going to be seamless, but we welcome your feedback on how we can do more and do it better.
I appreciate that. And then I'll end with, it is really difficult for people when we're talking about bike lanes, when kids are afraid to ride their bikes in their neighborhood. So you have to talk about the whole experience of an individual, because not all kids feel safe riding a bike. And so those issues need to be part of the bicycling conversation.
Agreed.
In order for people to feel like they're a part of it too.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Fernandez Anderson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, everyone. I don't get a hello back?
Hi.
Hello.
How are you, Councilor? Good to see you again.
Good afternoon. Oh, almost afternoon. Good morning. Can we start with projects in District 7 and what's coming? I know that there were some funds we had talked about a couple years ago to Harrison, and there's conversations about that. I know that Shawmut is going through community process. We talked about Washington Street, and I think it was Harrison, Washington, and Blue Hill up to Grove Hall, not Blue Hill beyond District 7. And we talked about repavements, and you know Blue Hill is a mess right now, but we have reasons why it's a mess. It's a good thing that we're getting infrastructures renovated and fixed and all the pipes done. Where are we with that? What streets are coming next in this year, 2024, 2025 for District 7?
So we will be publishing I was looking at a draft of the webpage that has our repaving plan last night. So we have it, we're very close to publishing the list, and we should have it for you within the next week or two. I believe that some of the streets that you had identified to us as in need of paving are on that list, but happy to take your feedback on it once we have it published, and we'll share it with you directly.
Fantastic, I can't wait. I really appreciate all of how responsive your cabinet is. Really do, responding to my text messages late at night, in the morning, whenever. I'm doing better with that. I am emailing. And in terms of, the trash bins, we did work on that. You were responsive. We talked about trash removal. We talked about lights. We talked about mass and cast. Every single time, your cabinet has been responsive, and I appreciate it across the board. I am really excited to look through. It sounds like in the way that you've planned for your mission this year and next year and the next upcoming 2 years or so, it sounds like you really listened to community voice. And I want to start by saying thank you, because it highly reflects District 7. As far as Hokies, working with Project Place to fill all Hokies, really appreciate that. I met a couple, and I was at T-Mobile getting my phone fixed, and she started telling me, people don't start with the nice stories about us, and it's really hard. I'm out there 4 in the morning. She was sort of, middle-aged woman from Dorchester. And so I just wanted to start and give a shout out to all the Hokies. Thank you so much for cleaning District 7 and Boston. It makes such a huge difference. But also she had a suggestion that on the app we had a comment section for compliments. So I think that's a wonderful idea, and we should do that if we can. Again, in terms of partnership, you've looked at really creative ways of partnering with Madison Park. The parking enforcement, of course, is huge. Of course, there's little tech. I met with some MIT students who are talking about different creative app ideas, which I know can be costly, but really love that the study is coming. So read your presentation thoroughly. Having said that, I do have some questions about declining of BIPOC employees in your cabinet since 2020, from 33.3% all the way to 20 down to 27.7%. Just wondering about that, and I understand that hiring is a challenge overall, but where are we in terms of figuring out proper DEI strategies for employment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think we are a lot of this work is being done in partnership with the city's People Operations Cabinet. One of their one of the goals that we have had as a city is really to try to create more entry points for people who are interested in public service, more opportunities even just to learn what it is, and the benefits, the ways in which people can be a part of being in government. And so we're certainly working within that framework, participating in job fairs, participating in outreach efforts, as well as some of the more direct outreach that we've done through some of these partnership programs that have allowed us to varying levels of our workforce to reach more people that represent the communities of Boston. I think we're ultimately, some of this too is about recognizing that, we need to grow the ranks of the diverse ranks of leadership within the department and the cabinet. And so, we are making active efforts as we think about where we have vacancies and opportunities for promotion to make sure that we are preparing people at every level of the workforce to move up, and that we are creating pathways for folks. I think, you know, we will see now within many of the kind of the sort of second layer management roles that we are seeing increases in the diversity of that portion of the workforce because we've been able to create pathways for folks to develop and grow within the different divisions of the cabinet. Would anybody else like to speak about this from their own team perspective, or?
I do appreciate that you went to the second level of my question without me even saying, you smart. And so I do want to talk about hiring. How many people from 24 to FY24 to date? I know that's only like 6 months. But have you been able to use some of those funds that we talked about to increase capacity? Did you go in contract? What did we do with those funds?
Which funds in particular?
Assuming smooth spending, there was like a surplus to increase capacity at FY24. I can get exact figures for you. I don't want to make these, generalizations. But we were looking to increase capacity, and I'm interested if you have, or what are the difficulties so far?
Yeah, so I'd want to know specifically the funds you're speaking of to respond to that. But I mean, overall, I think we are seeing some positive movement in terms of our ability to hire. We still do have a tremendous challenge with vacancies, but in some of our divisions that have struggled with personnel, as Deputy Chief Gove mentioned, we've now brought on 3 classes of parking meter supervisors and continue to see significant interest in applying for those jobs. I recently signed off on the addition of, I think, 6 junior engineers for our construction management team, which is filling a huge number of vacancies that impacts our ability to do project delivery. We are seeing progress in some areas of our public works operations as well in terms of being able to get to fully staffed. So I feel cautiously optimistic, but we have a ways to go, and every round of hiring we do is also in the context of the normal kind of attrition that we face of retirements and things like that. So, we kind of have to hire more than 100% of the vacancies we have to get to full staffing, but we're making headway.
Great. Any challenges in the pay? Like, are you guys getting paid enough?
I'm not gonna advocate anything of anyone sitting at this table, but I think there are areas where we know that we are not where we need to be relative to the market for public sector employment. This is especially true because we have a residency requirement in Boston, and I think we are all familiar with the incredibly high and rising cost of living in the city. We have positions in our cabinet that until very recently started at $17 an hour, and that's not enough money to live comfortably in the city of Boston. And so we have been working very closely with our People Ops cabinet to identify the areas where we have high vacancies and where we believe that low wages are part of that issue, and to reclassify some of the positions where this has been the biggest challenge. As I mentioned at the outset, the recently negotiated union contracts, particularly the one with AFSCME, does provide a larger boost, functionally a larger percentage boost to some of our lowest paid employees, relative to the workforce as a whole. And so we feel good about that, and I think we are making progress on the pay issues. Everything we do is in the context of our collective bargaining agreements, the relationships we have with the unions. We at this table have very little, basically no direct influence over pay, but we can work within this larger system that we have with our HR team, with our labor relations team, to really try to make sure that we're offering people a competitive wage and a set of benefits that makes them want to come work here. And I think we're making progress.
Good. It's nice to hear. It seems like the more labor intensive, the less you get paid. The people on the ground actually doing the labor are getting paid very low, right? And so I appreciate your advocacy or not laxity, but efforts in working on that. As far as, I mean, just to put it in context, $17 an hour is what our older youth in SuccessLink, with SuccessLink gets paid. So that's absolutely atrocious. Looking forward to understanding more about where you are in terms of pay and things like that. There are, so let me go down my list, because I have to feel, as all councilors here, have to then report back to my constituents. The speed humps, I'm very clear. I am grateful that you guys have prioritized District 7 in a really big way, especially Roxbury in terms of safety. Really appreciate the trash bins and the cleanups. The lights that have gone up every time I call, it gets resolved. When we are talking about trash, do you feel that or what are the challenges of changing the policy to restricting people from not using trash bags and forcing people to put it in bins outside? Have you thought about that? Are you thinking of changing that, or where are we?
Yeah, we've definitely thought about that. It's, this is sort of the containerization idea, and there's different ways to approach it. It's something that we want to do some pilots of new approaches in the coming years. The biggest challenge with requiring folks to put trash into bins is that many people do not have space to store the bins. And this is true in particular in dense neighborhoods where people are more likely to live in an apartment or a condo where there just may not be anywhere to put it. And so, the city has historically had a policy that allows trash to be placed out in bags if that is the option available to folks. We're looking at whether we can change that, whether there may be a shift where, if you are putting it out in a bag, maybe you can't put it out the night before for the all-night rat buffet that it can sometimes create. All of these policies have trade-offs, right? If you make changes about when people can put their trash out, somebody who, works an early shift may not be able to be home when their trash needs to go out. So our waste reduction team, led by Dennis Roach, has been putting together a menu of policy options that we want to look at, and we'll be working to develop some pilots and approaches to analyzing what might work here in Boston in the coming years.
What about considering the permanent bins outside so people can use?
That is one of the things that we are looking at. New York has been a early leader in trying to do that at scale. Like everything that we do, that can also come with trade-offs. I saw one estimate that New York will be losing approximately 10% of its on-street parking spaces to accommodate that program. And so I think, it's one of the ideas that we do want to try here in Boston, but figure out how to do it in a way that strikes the right balance for the neighborhood.
Live with rats or take the bus. I really appreciate that. I'll circle back on sidewalks and other questions.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
More.
Thank you, Council Fernandez Anderson. Council President Louis Jen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for asking such really great questions, especially around Hokies. Everyone wants Hokies. You want a Hokie, you don't know it. You want more Hokies and you don't know it, okay? There's a lot of really great stuff in here in this budget, and I think so many of us, right, we are called as city councilors to solve problems, big and small, and so a lot of this money seems oriented to helping us help our constituents solve problems, your constituents, and so thank you for that. I did want to actually ask about Hokies. There was a statement that of the 15 Hokie positions, 13 of them are filled, and there are 2 more that have left to be filled?
So we have, yes, 2 vacancies. One we're currently onboarding, so technically.
15 around the city?
Correct.
Okay, is that enough?
We also are, no.
Okay. Setup question,
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
We also have, we're bringing on some seasonal employees as well, which are Hokies, so probably another 15 to 17 of those.
How many are allocated to Mattapan Square, to Mattapan?
On my list right now, I have 2 permanent, and we'll all probably have 2 to 3 more once the seasonals come on board.
And are they working the weekends?
So it's optional. We have overtime pretty much every Saturday and Sunday, They're not forced to. If they can, if they want to, they're allowed to.
Thank you. I was in Mattapan Square on Sunday, and it was not good. It was really not good. And so if we had Hokies who dedicate to that, and I know oftentimes folks are lifting up, there's so many people who are lifting it up to me, and I know to other colleagues, Justin Million, Jaquetta's mother, there's so many people who bring this to our attention, and then seeing how bad it was while trying to run errands in the square, wanting it to be a place where people feel like they can be on weekends and run errands. More, if we could dedicate more attention to Mattapan Square, beautification, waste bins, I think that's an important thing for us to be doing. Chief Franklin Hodge, you stated something about it was about speed limits, and I just wanted to understand the numbers again. You said we know at this speed limit people are safe if someone's driving, and we know that at this speed limit someone will get killed. Can you just repeat those numbers?
Yeah,
for my edification?
I'm just pulling up some of the very specific data so I don't misquote it, but
While you pull those up, I will also say that I am incredibly grateful for the work of Dennis Roach and the waste reduction. It's been a really big issue that we've worked on, throughout the city. Councilor Fernandez Anderson was talking about Hokies for Roxbury. I want to highlight and underscore that, especially in a neighborhood that we've had pilot program working on Forest and Vine. We've been able to streamline, which is incredible, all the CDCs using the same pest control company. I want to shout out, that's been a win that we've gotten, and I want to shout out my chief of staff, Emily Poston, for working hand in hand with a lot of people to make that happen, John Orich. More resources towards trash cans, especially in our neighborhoods, in our black and brown neighborhoods, towards waste reduction, towards pilot programs, it's definitely needed.
We appreciate that. If there's specific locations on the the litter basket side of the house that you think we should consider for that, please let us know.
Thank you. And you all have been, those were some of my first requests. You've been really good with that. We just want to make sure that we are maintaining the diligence, because I'm out and I sometimes struggle, where's the nearest place that I can put something? So wanted to.
So just to answer your question about speed, 20 miles an hour, an impact to the pedestrian has a 13% likelihood of a fatality or serious injury. At 30 miles an hour, that jumps to 40%. At 40 miles an hour, that jumps to 73%. I would add that those numbers are higher at every speed for older adults, people 70 years old or older, and that curve is steeper.
70 years older as a victim or as the person driving?
As a victim, as somebody struck. That older adults are far more likely to be killed or injured in any crash, and they are the higher speeds are more likely to result in a fatality for that sort of curve of risk gets much steeper for older adults.
And that's not true for young kids?
I don't have data about kids. Young adults tend to be less likely than average to be killed. There has been a lot of research in just the last couple of years that has looked at vehicle design as another factor. Most of the speed research is about 10 years old. And what we've seen in trends in vehicle designs is that the front ends of vehicles are getting substantially taller and substantially more vertical. And that has a tremendous impact on pedestrian safety, in particular young children. It means that when a pedestrian is hit, they're more likely to be hit in the torso or the head. If you have ever walked by a large American pickup truck like a Ford F-150, just pay attention to where the top of the hood is relative to your body. You will likely realize that if you are ever hit by that, it's going to hit the parts of your body. It's not in the legs where you end up on the hood. It's going to hit you in a place where it's going to kill you. And that, I think, is a huge factor in this safety crisis that we're facing.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that on the record, and I know that you all are working trying to work as fast as you can on street design, and Vision Zero, which I want to highlight and uplift, is really important, how we get to there, and it really does involve street redesign, so thank you for that work. I also want to uplift the work on the sidewalk and ramp constructions. I think it's important for all of us, especially when we see loose bricks. I think Gail Miller in East Boston pointed out some loose bricks in the downtown area, but especially for our disabled and differently abled and folks pushing their kids, and that we are doing a better job at this. There's a big accessibility reason to get this right. Also the better parking across our neighborhoods. I think some of my councilors were asking about this to improve management of congested curb space. $100,000 seems like an important investment. It seems like it's not enough. I will also say this, that I think, and I've said this all the time, when it comes to the conversation around parking, what you really need to be working on, and I say this as I'm involved in that and all of us, is I think is the psychology around parking. And so I was at the Daily Table yesterday, it's a new supermarket in Mattapan that's great, and they're not getting the traffic that they should get because their prices are phenomenal and it's a nonprofit structure. But I think it's even shifting what people think about supermarkets, right? When people think of a supermarket, they also think of parking lot, that there should be a parking lot attached to it or close by. And so it's harder for people to identify it as a supermarket. I'm wondering what work you all are doing around sort of that psychology of how people think about parking. There's a municipal lot across the street from the Daily Table in Mattapan Square, right? But people aren't making that connection. I'm wondering what is the work to be done around the psychology of how people think about parking, what's available.
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll let Vineet speak if he has some ideas, but I'm not sure that we have done a whole lot of work about that kind of sort of the psychology aspect of it. A lot of what we have focused our attention on is whether or not the way we regulate individual stretches of curb matches the demand. You will, if you travel to some parts of Boston, you will see 2-hour parking signs that have probably been up unchanged since the White administration. Meanwhile, the businesses along those corridors have turned over multiple times. We've had the rise of food delivery, people's travel behavior patterns have changed. So a lot of what we're trying to do is to move away from this model of defaulting to 2-hour parking everywhere, and instead going in and doing a much more nuanced analysis of what the needs are on each block and creating detailed parking maps that have short-term, long-term, medium-term parking, loading, commercial activity zones, all the things that will ideally better accommodate the businesses that are there. The hope is that by doing that people who already travel in those neighborhoods start to see their needs met better by the way the street is configured, and that it can make neighborhood business districts more attractive places for people to go. We just completed a large study in Rosendale Square that's going to be rolled out in the coming this year, and that really did this kind of like nuanced analysis that we think will be very beneficial to the businesses there and just people's perceptions of, is this a place that's convenient to go? Will I be able to do what I need to do here? Anything you want to add, Vineet?
I think you hit the main points. I just want to add that to have that nuanced understanding, you have to work with the merchants and you have to work with people who live along those streets. And so when we do the kind of study that the chief mentioned in Rosendale Square, we did it hand in hand with all the merchants who are in that small business district, to understand to a fine level of detail as to exactly what their needs are. When does the big truck show up to do their delivery? Do they have a lot of 15-minute pickup drop-off kind of demand? And so once we have that sense, we have to take decisions on how to allocate space on the curb at each block.
Thank you. I'll continue following up on this because I think it was presented a fascinating question for us to be asking and working on. My last question, and I also want to, I'm sure you've addressed this, the vacancies are high. Is this the highest that they've been, or is it traditionally really this high? We want to make sure that you all are getting the people to work in your departments, but we also want to make sure that we're using the city resources effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, I don't know that we have really robust historical data going back that far. And so I can't say that this is the highest they've ever been. They are high to a degree that significantly impacts our ability to deliver key services and forces us to, in some cases, rely far more on contracted services which are less cost effective, or to fail to deliver projects that we intend to deliver because we don't have the personnel for it.
Okay, thank you. And the last question is on signage. There's signs. Does the City of Boston own all of the signage that appears in the City of Boston? I'm asking particularly about because of the Black Heritage Trail. I was meeting with the museum the other day trying to figure out who owns that signage because a lot of it is fading, a lot of it needs to be redone. trying to identify where the city support is. So that's an ask that's coming to you to make sure that, especially as we're thinking about the Commemoration Commission and the history of the city, that we are investing city dollars in making sure that signage is inviting and welcoming to people so that they understand where the history is, especially in streets where buses aren't allowed to go down, so it's harder to access certain areas.
Regulatory signage on our streets we own. Non-regulatory signage is very complicated and is often lost to the mist of time about the history of how something went up, but we're happy to work with you on this particular in the Black Heritage Trail.
Thank you. Looks like we're going to be having a complicated conversation, Chief.
Indeed.
Want to thank you for all the work, especially one last thing, mattress collection, so important, and we see it all, so we probably need more money there too. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. And just to touch on permanent employees, I have a graph up here. FY18, we over budgeted, like unused money was 1.5, 1.7 in FY19, FY20, 2.1. This is millions of dollars. FY21, 1.4 million. FY22, 1.4 million. And FY23 is the largest, where we were over budgeted by $4.6 million. Councilor Santana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the administration and my colleagues. I just wanted to start by saying Public Works and BTD both do so much for work for our city that's highly visible to our residents and businesses. Everyone is looking to our streets and sidewalks, including visitors and workers, in addition to everyone who lives here in Boston. We know there's tremendous need and demand for improving the safety of our streets, as well as keeping up with the maintenance of our existing infrastructure. And we know that you do that with every limited staff and resources. So I just wanted to say first, thank you to the work that you all do and the people on the ground that make our city safe and great. Following up on a question that one of my colleagues, Councilor Fitzgerald, had earlier, as we start the pilot for the new pavement markings team, how confident are we whether that will end up being a cost saving by comparison to contracting that work out? And is the goal even to save money, or is it just to be more responsive to the needs for crosswalks and other sort of pavement markings? Since our crosswalks paintings often fade quicker than we can repaint it, and our crosswalks markings are important part of our street safety, and you noted the importance of the maintenance of our crosswalks. Will we be able to measure the impact on consistently maintaining crosswalks markings as part of the pilot, so that way we can have kind of that data next year as we're approaching that?
Great, thank you for the question, Councilor. So no, the objective of the program is not to necessarily save money, but we would like to improve efficiency. There is a possibility that through the analysis of the program there could be a cost savings, but that is not the objective. In the last year, BTD has implemented an asset management system, Cartograph, which we historically have not had. So many of the maintenance programs that we do year in and year out will now be planned using that tool. So, we'll be using that tool to both plan the work, but then also at the end of the year look to do an analysis of kind of work completed, how efficient was it, are there areas where we could deploy the in-house team where it would be more efficient, but the real objective here is to provide a higher level of efficient kind of basic city services for pavement markings.
Great, thank you. Going into my second question, and it's around kind of the community process. I absolutely believe we need safer streets, and the redesign and rebuild projects are a critical part of that. At the same time, we know that we hear a huge amount of feedback from residents and businesses across the city all the time that that they feel unheard through the community process. And that really comes from all sides, from people who think we should maintain our existing streets and uses and shouldn't use any new bike lanes or road diets, and from people who think that we should be adding more parking, travel lanes, and loading zones, and from people who think that we should be drastically reducing parking and vehicle travel lanes so we can make more space for pedestrians, cyclists, and other micromobility travelers. We obviously can't please everyone, and ultimately we need our streets to be safe and balanced for everyone. And I think a big part of that comes down to having a community process that helps people understand the safe practices that we're taking that are necessary to reduce fatalities and injuries, while also making the community feel heard on their local knowledge of their streets and what's going to work best in their neighborhood. We know from studies that our conventional community engagements, like virtual projects meetings in the evening, don't effectively address outreach to the whole community. In fact, in addition to national studies about community engagement, as well as studies by the academic institutions like Boston University, we've actually seen that issue of uneven representation of the community in the city's own recent studies for the Article 80 modernization efforts as well. Can one of you talk about how you're going to manage community outreach and community education to ensure that people are engaged in the community process, and that those people who are engaged represent the full community, and that we're effectively getting information out to those people, to as many people as possible, and that we're being effective in helping our residents to understand the vision and purpose of our streets redesign projects. And do we track data? On the demographics of who's participating in the community process engagement?
This is a great question, and I think you kind of hit on a lot of the talking points of sort of the issues that we think about when we design community engagement processes. One of the most crucial things that I just want to kind of emphasize that you mentioned is the traditional community engagement model of everybody goes to the neighborhood school at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Does not reach and engage our full community, right? For every person who can come, there's somebody else who is putting their kids to bed, or on the bus getting to their second job, or a renter who moved into the neighborhood 6 months ago who doesn't, they're not on the neighborhood association list, they didn't know the meeting was happening. And so I think we as a cabinet have really tried to recognize that, and for a number of years have been developing more robust engagement strategies that allow us to really reach a broader cross-section and hear from a much wider breadth of voices than we traditionally do. I'm going to ask Vineet to talk a little bit about that. I think we have our Blue Hill Ave project in particular is probably one of the most profound examples of that. Some of the work we did around planning for Cummins Highway had a similar reach, but I'll let Vineet speak to how we're thinking about that.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Councillor, for bringing up this issue. You touched on all the kind of broader concerns and kind of the nitty-gritty effort that needs to be made to have a successful community engagement process. And as the Chief mentioned, we've been trying to do that over the years. For example, in the last few years, we have realized that the best community engagement process comes by working with the community to design the process itself, so that we are confident that the process that we've embraced is the one that the community thinks is the right process. So that's a really important first step. The other piece is that we want to make sure that we have used all the mechanisms or ways to engage community. So it's just not a community meeting at night, it's going to where people are, going to MBTA stations, going to a neighborhood meeting that is already being held, setting up outside a small business district. It's all of those things that we customize for each public engagement process that we do in the city. Yeah, no, and then there are, to your point about have we reached the full diversity of the neighborhood? So, for example, if we do a survey, we ask people to put their zip, you don't need their addresses, but at least their zip code. And that gives a sense of whether we are reaching out to everybody in a neighborhood when we do a survey, for example.
But we don't keep necessarily track of the demographics of who's participating.
Right, in this so we ask people to fill in their information when they're putting in their survey, so it gives us a good sense of who actually participated, and then we compare that to the neighborhood's demographics to see whether we are reaching out to the full spectrum of people who live there.
Great.
It depends to a bit on the context, right? So, when we're doing transportation project, like multimodal projects, we often do ask people to tell us how they travel, what modes of transportation they use, so that we can make sure that that diversity is reflected in there. I just wanted to add one note on this larger topic, though, because I think it comes up a lot in safety. There is a tension, hopefully a healthy one, between engagement and process and the speed at which we can move and deploy changes on our streets that are often necessary for safety. So one of the things that we really try to be intentional about is calibrating the level and intensity of engagement with the nature of the impacts. We have a speed hump program where our community engagement is primarily focused about informing people what's going to happen, when it is going to happen, not if it should happen at all. Other projects, you look at something like Blue Hill Ave, where we're doing block-by-block level conversations about how we handle the design of different elements of each individual block. Those are kind of two ends of a spectrum, but it's something that we always try to strike a healthy balance on, and it sometimes takes support from our elected officials to say, there are certain things that we should just do, and we always need to keep people informed. We always need to provide knowledge and information, but not everything should be up for a debate when there are critical safety changes that we know we need to implement more quickly. And we always look to you for your guidance and support on how we strike the right balance there.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chief, and I appreciate that thoughtful clarification for those listening in. One last question, just following up on an earlier question that, Councilor Brighton had about flex posts and pedestrians delineators. I understand that the idea that these aren't meant to be permanent fixtures of our streets design, and also that we have to strike a balance between them being visible and sturdy, but also not damaging a vehicle or injuring pedestrians or cyclists. But in practice, they end up damaged extremely often, and actually do become a major hazard to pedestrians and cyclists. They often end up broken and in the ways of bike lanes, or tossed up into the sidewalks or crosswalks. And when the poles breaks off completely, the remaining base can be hard to notice, and people can trip on them as they're passing by. I'm a little skeptical that they're actually a net benefit in a lot of these locations. And if these are meant to be a temporary measure, can you talk about what we're going to do to be more permanent fix, and what we'll be able to move away from these temporary measures that will, that I think we all need to recognize aren't necessarily ideal?
Yeah, no, great question. And I'm going to ask my deputy chiefs here, Nick, to speak a little bit about maintenance of the infrastructure that does get destroyed, and Julia to talk a little bit about some of the ways we're trying to build more permanent stuff.
Thank you.
So short term on the maintenance side, we do have a regular program in place to kind of inspect and replace these, but we encourage both members of the council, the public, if and when you observe that one has been struck and it's on the side of the road or in the bike lane, please call or put that into 311, right? Because we will respond to that right away.
Sure. And Councilor, in regards to being able to move to something more permanent, that is something that our teams think about all the time. I think we are moving. We're kind of maturing as a team, so flex posts are in the toolbox of quick build. So that means it's something that we can deploy quickly. It doesn't have to be a capital project with millions of dollars associated with it. And after deploying them for a number of years, there's now a lot. And that's what we're seeing out there in the street, is we've kind of exceeded our ability to replace them very quickly. So we're now being a little bit more judicious about where we deploy them. You're going to see, well, you probably already do see in some places that we're putting them maybe concentrated at street corners instead of like all along a block, because perhaps they don't need to be all along. Maybe they just need to be doing their job where they're most visible at an intersection. They are doing their jobs when they get hit by cars, because they're often deployed in places where we're making a change, and it's a forgiving piece of infrastructure that can get hit by a car and it won't damage the car. Something on the other end of the spectrum like Termont Street, it's all granite. And, the change in the reorganization of the street was done. There are flex posts still out there to kind of let you know that there's things there. But the granite, we do see, it gets hit by cars. We did see last year, like after it was freshly installed, it actually stopped a car chase because somebody ran into it. So going forward, we're going to try to use more things like granite and concrete in more places, in places where we know that that's a more permanent change that isn't like a guess of like, oh, we're just going to try this out and pilot it. And also going in and replacing some of the things that are done currently in flex posts with those same materials of concrete and granite.
Great. No, thank you. Appreciate the thoughtful answer, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I just really appreciate the work that you all do, and really prioritizing safety for our residents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Santana. I just want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilor Durkin and Councilor Coletta. Councilor Durkin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair. I have so many things, and I'm so excited. This is the best panel we could be sitting in front of because a lot of residents reach out with things, and we're in contact all the time. So I'm really grateful for all of your leadership. So wanted to start with the Fenway, speed humps. Petersboro and Queensbury was very excited to see some stuff happen in other parts of the Fenway, but the West Fenway is really requesting speed humps, and just wanted to see if there was any plan or thoughts around there, but wanted to advocate for Petersboro and Queensbury.
Yeah, so looking at our map, Peterborough is marked as eligible, Queensbury is not. We'd have to do a little bit of research to figure out why that is, and sometimes this changes when we actually go to do design. This is not a zone of speed humps that is prioritized, though, for the next couple of years, but we will. It is on our list of places to get to.
I have got a real advocate to connect you guys to, Tom Jones. He has come to every of my office hours with a map and with circles of where things are unsafe, so would love to introduce you to him. Also, wanted to, Nick, particularly, you have a history with DCR. We have a lot of DCR roadways in our district. And we have a lot of really bad and fast and scary crosswalks on Park Drive. Another note to my friend Tom Jones. Wanted to ask how we can effectively work with DCR to make sure that all of the streets that are within the city of Boston but aren't necessarily under our purview can get the attention they need for safety.
Sure. So there, as the chief knows, that there's ongoing conversations with DCR on the lowering of the speed limit in the area of the Fenway and Park Drive. A lot of that corridor is currently still 30 miles an hour. There are some safety improvements that have been implemented so far, but there is more work to be done. Unlike speed regulation changes in municipalities and within the MassDOT Highway Department, the commissioner of DCR, per their regulations, has the ability to change speed signs on parkways, which is a regulation authority that's pretty unique to DCR.
Thank you. And
just to add a couple things on that. So there are a couple of projects at the edges of DCR roadways. Well, actually one that is really on a DCR roadway. So at the Sears Rotary, I don't know if we're allowed to call it that anymore because it hasn't been Sears in a while, but that stretch of Park Drive, there's work being done on short-term safety improvements for pedestrians and bikes, as well as a long-term capital project that is funded through the MPO to really reconfigure that very dangerous set of streets. There is also the work that MassDOT is doing to replace the Bowker overpass kind of at the other end of Park Drive. And the city has been working very closely with MassDOT to try to push them towards more pedestrian-friendly choices when they structure that design, and that will help with some of the crosswalks in that area of the Fenway as well. So we're
Thank you so much for your work there. I know it's a labor of love. And I just want to say I'm grateful to the work of Mike Broll and the entire team. I did reach out about some of the track marks with the drag racing, and I did hear serendipitously that it's actually on the repave schedule for the upcoming year. So thank you for getting us that quick answer.
Somebody spilled the beans early. We were waiting for the webpage to go up.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
And I'm sorry to bring it in the public domain, but
all
excited
good.
by that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then just in terms of the Back Bay, I wanted to advocate for work done at the crosswalk of Berkeley and Marlborough Street. That one is particularly scary. You have to wait for there to be something telling cars to go right in order to cross, and it's a very tricky intersection, and it's one that I would be surprised if there weren't incidences at. And then Beacon and Arlington intersection, which I know, Chief, I have reached out to you about recently. And then this is a bigger capital project, but hopefully in future years, the Comm Ave Mall mid crosswalk blocks. I know it's an expensive project, but would really like to advocate for that being part of the capital. I mean, that is naturally where people are crossing, and I think it's where everyone crosses because a lot of people enjoy these parks, even that live outside of my district. And then Boylston and Berkeley, there's a handicap ramp that is always full of water, and in the winter it freezes right outside the now defunct Starbucks. If we can advocate for some edits there, I just think it's a very inaccessible area for folks with disabilities. And then as you guys may have noticed and have been part of, the Boston Water and Sewer Commission is shutting down Revere Street today, but it's many streets over the coming weeks. Utilities are working as well, and there's a lot of utility work being done. Beacon Hill really needs a break. My street of Anderson Street, all through the pandemic was having utility work done on it while I was working from home. So I feel particularly sensitive to the emails I get about construction work, but as much as we can be in touch about that, that would be really helpful. And wanted to give Mission Hill some love. I know that there's some work and potential thoughts given to a mid-block crosswalk at Roxbury Crossing, which is right on the line of my district, and my colleague Tanya Fernandez-Anderson wanted to advocate for that natural line of where people cross, and I know that was something that my predecessor really advocated for, and hopefully will be part of the
This
new...
is to this on Columbus to the south for RCC.
Oh, on Tremont.
On Tremont,
Yes.
yeah, but okay. Yeah, okay.
Yes, you're right. It's on the right.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And then power lines in Mission Hill are obviously still above ground. This will be a huge project and will be part of mitigation that I'd like to piece together through development projects that are happening in Mission Hill. So just want to give you all a heads up that it's a huge priority of me and the neighborhood. And then just thank you so much. I haven't had the opportunity as a team to say we did a brick audit of Charles Street and everyone worked really fast in the fall to get things done. We are underway conducting another brick audit. So, and brick, not the other brick, not the police brick, but bricks on our streets. Thank you so much. And we're underway in more of like the center of the neighborhood, but we'll be paying a little attention to Charles Street as well. And yeah, that was probably, I think I'm almost gone over, but just wanted to sort of get out, I know there's a list of priorities, and I'm just constantly, it was actually funny, Councilor Coletta, I put in there was sorry, I'm missing the word. A pothole at the line of our district, and there was 2 potholes, and they fixed the one on my side of the district, but not on Councilor Coletta's side of the district. So I got to go back in there. But that's how in such close collaboration we're in, and I need to take better pics of these potholes to make sure they're all filled. But I had a petty cab driver ride by me and say pothole city, which I hope that we're never considered a pothole city. So I'm constantly on the streets through unwanting and emailing your team, and I thank you all for your fast and partnership. It's so important to me and my team, and I'm really grateful. Thank you so much,
Appreciate the
Chair.
partnership. This is pothole season, and we are putting tons of asphalt down every single week to try to close them up. But please do continue to let us know. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Councilor Durkin. Just also want to highlight 17 Court Street. I think it's something I emailed downtown. Public testimony brought that to our attention, so I just want to flag that for the panel. Councilor Coletta, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I apologize for being late. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I appreciate your work on everything. The beauty of being in deep partnership with you all is that I pretty much have all the updates that I need, and we got some updates yesterday from the chief on utility accountability, street repaving. I love seeing the investments in mattresses. We worked pretty closely on that issue, was able to get a letter on behalf of my colleagues going up to the Department of Environmental Protection, asking them for more money and more resources. So I'm happy to see that. I have a couple of questions based on some of the things that are in here. So when it comes to mattresses, the last that I had heard, we were trying to get a contract with somebody to build a software out. How is that going? Do we have somebody who can speak to that? Is Dennis?
Yeah, Dennis is here.
Sorry,
and
Dennis.
He's gonna.
And then while he's making his way down to the podium, more information about trash containerization. I would love to learn about parking enforcement officers, how we're doing, if we intend to hire any more. I heard that we're zooming out from parking regulations and trying to figure out how they match up in our city streets, and that program was on pause for the residential parking program, so I'd love an update on that. And then just understanding what the right procedure is for us when it comes to advocating for streets. I'm happy Meridian Street is getting repaved in East Boston. There's so many more that I hope will get repaved this year, and working with Julia and talking about, Deputy Director, or Deputy Chief, did I get that wrong? Deputy Chief, talking about green infrastructure and how those line up, how we can kill two birds with one stone and beautify our streets while also making sure that they're safe to traverse. So those are my questions. I think we'll start with the mattresses. Dennis, good to see you.
Good to see you too. So on the mattress collection software, we are in the final phases of testing this week. We hope to roll out the new software, I think at some point end of next week. And this will allow constituents more the ability to easier book picking up mattresses. So you'll be able to select a time, a date, those types of things. But we hope to roll it out next week. Final testing commences tomorrow.
Awesome.
Containerization.
Yeah, in containerization, we're just currently searching for the right solutions to pilot inside of Boston. So we're closely, as Yasha mentioned earlier, we're closely monitoring New York and other places in this country about what they're doing with containerization, and we're hoping to roll out some pilot programs, do some more studies on what could work for the city of Boston over the next fiscal year.
I keep talking about the blue nets that Japan has, so please keep continuing to look into that and/or give me a question or an answer rather, if it works or if it doesn't work. Parking enforcement officers, how that class went last year or 2 years ago, if we intend to hire any more, and then just a status update on parking regulations and the residential parking permit program.
Sure, thank you, Councilor. So we do have some good news on parking enforcement hiring. We've hired 3 classes of parking meter supervisors in fiscal 24. We've hired a total of 22 officers. So parking enforcement staffing levels as of last week were at 118. That's roughly about a 12% increase over last year, and we're trying to get that to 125 by the end of the fiscal year. So we are starting to make some progress there. That will, as I mentioned earlier, that will allow us to start to, hopefully later this year, have a conversation about restarting the RPP program. And then specific to the traffic rules and regulations, we have been working on a draft revision of those regulations for the better part of the last year at least. And that is something else we also hope to be sharing shortly.
Okay. Do you have a timeline on that? I know you said shortly, but residents are asking when they can start to request those signs on their streets for residential parking.
Regards to RPP, I think probably sometime in the fall of this year is a reasonable time period. There's engagement around those discussions that needs to happen. Obviously, because the program has been on pause for the period of time it has, that we want to make sure that we prioritize the communities and neighborhoods that have been waiting patiently since the program was paused.
Just to add on the parking enforcement personnel piece, when I started in this job, there were, I think, 4 layers of management missing from the org chart around the parking enforcement team, where we just had layer after layer of vacancy. And that's a big factor in why the overall numbers have been down so much, because we hadn't had the people to even run the classes and do the hiring. Under Deputy Chief Gove's leadership, we have filled most of those vacancies. We now have a robust management structure, much of it filled with people who have done the work. And I am very optimistic about what that means for our ability to not only staff up, but to maintain a high degree of morale to ensure that people have the support that they need. Parking enforcement has been neglected for too long. It is essentially important for safety and quality of life, and we have made this a top priority to rebuild that organization and make it a happy and productive place that we know it needs to be for the city.
Thank you, and I've definitely seen a difference, so just, again, thank you for that. And it's not just safety, but it's also revenue for the city.
Yes, it is.
I know that a lot of people don't like that, but it is essential revenue for the city. And then my last question was about the streets and just advocating for streets. I've talked about the streets list that exists somewhere, and at what point are they on the list to be repaved? And I certainly know which streets are in bad condition. I know that you do too, but it's just expanding the capacity, expanding the resources to move faster is, I think, my advocacy and what I'm hearing from the neighborhood. So if you can just speak to that and what we can do as city councilors to advocate for certain streets moving forward.
Sure. I always appreciate your partnership as well, Councilor. And I think, our team has been working with the special challenge in your district in particular is the amount of utility work that's going on.
Yes.
So I know you know that. I know, we know that. I thank you for your walk and your time as well to look at those particular issues. So that's been our greatest challenge for, going to restore streets, to, make them whole again after experiencing a lot of construction. We have to unfortunately wait until Boston Water and Sewer and other utilities are cleared out of the area. But I think just continuing our communication, and if there are other streets, I know that our team is watching closely and kind of trying to push along in our regulatory capacity the utilities to clear out as quickly as they can so that we can put streets back to being usable by the community. That's something that we're working on, and I know in East Boston that's been our highest priority, is really just trying to get those projects wrapped up because it's so many things happening in one area. Mm-hmm. I think, anything else that's like a particular issue, always happy to hear from you. If there's something that, it's not on our radar, I think just continuing that communication is always welcome.
Great, thank you. And I'm really happy about the utility accountability piece of it. Thank you, Nick. Yesterday during a coffee hour, I brought a constituent directly to you to talk about that. I did have a conversation with Eversource and have had multiple conversations with National Grid and Boston Water and Sewer about their contractors as well as their subcontractors, which is how awful the quality of work has been on our city streets. And I don't know if we have any enforcement mechanisms for that. I know that there was talk about an ordinance or some sort of legislation that could hold them accountable, but has there been any discussion about true enforcement of that and holding some of our utility partners accountable with their contractors and subcontractors?
Yes, so, the powers that we currently have are permitting. So we do, in our permitting capacity, go and monitor the work that they do. And I think that we have seen, just anecdotally, a dip in quality of some of these contractors. I think maybe it can be attributed to just staff turnover, new teams learning how to do this work after the pandemic, where there wasn't as much work happening for a few years, and now there's just a lot of new people out there. Yeah. So we do have, our construction inspection unit out there every day. It is a small but mighty team, and they are the ones who are charged with kind of trying to keep an eye on the quality of work that's happening from the private utilities that are out there in our streets. Again, we can't be at every site all the time. So if there are particular things that residents or you are seeing that don't seem right, always reach out to 311. Also, you have our cell phones, so feel free. But that's the team that's really out there on the front lines trying to keep them accountable. And the chief and I are also looking at our process as a whole. It is a complicated permitting process, and I think we're interested in evaluating if it can be improved. I think the utilities would probably appreciate some clearer communication as well. Mm-hmm. So that is something that we're looking at for process improvement.
I would just add on that one point that when we, some of what we've been doing recently is process mapping, right? Even understanding the complexity of it and putting it down on paper so it isn't just in the heads of our team, our various teams. One of the things that's clear when we look at those process maps is that a lot of the process we design predates the era of smartphones and everyone having a camera all the time. And so I believe that there are areas where we can switch to an accountability framework that depends less on always having a city employee who is out there catching a problem. We will always need that inspection staff, and they have a lot of work to do, but there are some things where we can hold the utilities accountable by making them give us proof that they have done the thing that they said that they are supposed to do, providing documentation, having more automated mechanisms to follow up to confirm that things got done the right way. And so that's part of what we're looking at in this project, is where we can rebuild the processes around the technology and tools we have now to make them more effective at creating that accountability.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. One thing that I constantly hear when we install the speed hump, people are happy, but then they ask me, like, why didn't they do the street over? Is there any, why don't we do the street over when we install the new speed humps?
A speed hump costs about $4,500 to install, and repaving a street, I don't know if you have the latest, I don't know if either of you know off the top of your head, but it's vastly more expensive. It's a vastly more complex construction project to do a full repave of a street. We are certainly trying to do more alignment between the different types of work streams of our projects, so that we're not repaving a street, restriping it, and then a year later coming back and grinding off all the markings to put down a new design. We're doing a much better job now of tracking and coordinating. But fundamentally, in order to move quickly on the speed hump program, we chose to focus on one and only one thing, which is the hump and the associated signage. Right. As our program matures and grows, there may be opportunities. We did, as an example, in JP last year on Paul Gore Street, which is one of the rare streets that had speed humps, pre-existing speed humps. When we did go and repave it, even though it wasn't on the list for getting new speed humps, because there were existing ones we had to replace, we actually added a bunch more. So we're trying to make sure at least those two programs are thoughtfully coordinated with each other.
Awesome. And then is there a list on schedule for sidewalk repair? I remember my first term, I was probably 311 in everything, whether it was a cracked sidewalk or, the patchwork that happens. Is there any list on schedule on when sidewalks get repaired?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask Deputy Chief Campbell to talk about how we're approaching sidewalks this year. This is an area we have put, one, a ton of money into, or are putting a ton of money into with this budget, and two, have really done a lot of work to restructure the way we bid contracts for sidewalks to allow us to both do large-scale repairs in whole areas of the city while simultaneously having more capacity to do spot repairs. But do you want to speak a little bit to how you're building that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate the question, Councilor. Like the Chief said, we've thought a lot about this. We actually spent the entire winter thinking about how we're going to attack our construction season this year, and the way that we're thinking about doing sidewalks is new and evolved this year. So we will be sharing that process publicly because we get so many questions just like yours. We get many questions about just like, what are you doing? Like, when is this street going to get repaved, or when is this sidewalk going to get repaired? When I've put in a request multiple times, me as a constituent, I know it's a problem, city, so when is it getting fixed? We want to be able to answer that question. So how we decide where we're going to do the sidewalk work is complicated, but we can explain it. We do have basically area-wide contracts where we have like a certain amount of money that is infused into just a certain part of a neighborhood, so that we can have a contractor work at scale. They can do a whole bunch of things in a small area, and they'll basically be working in that one area for most of a construction season. We do that when we've done a citywide analysis and we've looked at the need for all of the sidewalks, and we've looked at the quality of the sidewalks, and we also look at the need for ADA ramps. We'll be putting up a website in coming weeks where we can explain this. We'll also be having a community meeting, just like kind of citywide information, so that people can understand finally how we make these decisions. So those concentrated area contracts are what the Chief is talking about when we basically know we've got an area that needs a lot of work, and so we'll send one of those contracts there. The other way that we take care of fixes on sidewalks is basically a customer relations management driven approach. So that's where we hear about things from community members, through our liaisons in the ONS team, from the 311 requests that we get, and from yourselves. And so with that, that's not specific to an area. That's just like the worst, places on our sidewalks across the whole city. And that's a nimble contract where that contractor can kind of go around to different places and take care of those very bad quality areas of sidewalk. So those are the two different ways that we're deploying work. And we're doing it at a scale, again, that's larger than we have done before.
Awesome. And I do have a list that I'll be sharing, but also like just more alignment around, I guess, when we do park renovations, because we get a new park, we get a new basketball court, but then like the sidewalk's broken. So just trying to see if there's more alignment around park renovations. I know Ceylon's getting under construction, Mother Rest, Fenlon Park. So just seeing if we can improve those sidewalks while we get the new park.
Yeah, it's an area of where we have work to do. We are starting to do more of that coordination with the Parks Department, but it is not quite as systematized as we think it needs to be. We've had a couple of opportunities where we've, they've identified a sidewalk issue, and oftentimes what happens is the Parks project isn't funded at a level that allows the sidewalks to be taken care of. So what we've done in a few locations is transferred some of our sidewalk budget to them, knowing that we would need to do those ramps and those sidewalks anyways, and then they have been able to incorporate that into their project plan. So that's something that we hopefully can systematize more as we do these projects.
Perfect. And then the residents of Bloomfield Terrace, they got a new sidewalk, but what happened was it damaged a lot of their yard space and their green grass, and now they're wanting to get back their green grass. So Bloomfield Terrace, they said that the contractors ruin their yard, and they have pictures, and I can send that over as well. How many people did the cabinet hire last year?
I don't know if I have that number off the top of my head.
Okay, and then just for, I guess just my math, you said 65%, so that's 311 vacant positions?
Give or take, yeah.
Awesome. And then what are your hiring goals for this year?
As many as we can. I mean, I think we have not set an explicit numeric goal. A lot of it is team specific. So we have certain areas where we are dramatically understaffed and we're trying to get back to full strength. Here we talked a lot about parking enforcement. Some of our engineering teams are in a similar position, and that affects our ability to deploy capital. Right. So each team leader has their areas of focus and their own goals for that. To me, the key question is, do we know where we have a need, and do we have the resources deployed in those particular areas to support? We did last year bring on, for the first time, a talent acquisition specialist, aka a recruiter. So we now have a person whose full-time job is dedicated to hiring, not just HR in general. And so that has been incredibly helpful for both capacity, but also making sure that people who are considering employment with the cabinet have a sort of friendly face who can help shepherd them through the process. Awesome.
And one of the things I hear about mostly from my constituents is parking enforcement, expanding the hours, and Commissioner Gove and Rocco, we had conversations about this as well. But there's a class, right? Like they have to go through an academy. Did we budget for academy in this budget?
Yeah, we are funded for our full capacity of parking meter supervisors. We have held 3 so far this fiscal year, and are hoping to have a 4th before the end of the fiscal year. And that, again, those positions are funded in fiscal 24 and are proposed to be in 25.
And those leadership roles that we talked about having filled, that part of the job description for those folks is to run the training and onboarding for new parking enforcement personnel. Unlike some of our public safety agencies, we don't need a special building to train parking enforcement folks. We can just do it in the facilities that we have. So the parking meter supervisors don't need to go through an academy, or
They go through a formal training program.
It's just a training?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then any thoughts on expanding the hours of code enforcement, parking enforcement inside of our district or Dorchester, Mattapan?
Code enforcement is 7 days a week, but parking enforcement.
Right.
Yeah. Nick, you want to?
So I can talk a little bit about a pilot we'll be proposing for this summer, which is we're proposing to bring parking enforcement to Sundays, which something we don't traditionally do right now unless associated with a special event. What we plan to focus on is really safety enforcement. So, things like HPDV parking, parking in front of hydrants, parking in bus and bike lanes, crosswalks, that kind of thing. We're proposing to start that program come Memorial Day weekend and then run it through Labor Day.
And then, just again, like how many jobs we hired, the department hired last year, and then also how many of the job vacancies are seasonal? That'll be helpful.
Yeah, we can definitely get you additional data.
Across the cabinet or in parking?
Yeah, across the cabinet.
Okay.
Yeah, but you could break it down by cabinet level as well. Now I'll go back to, now we'll go to public testimony. Okay. All right. So let me give Councilor Braden a time for second round questions, and then we'll go to public testimony.
Thank you for accommodating me. I have to be upstairs with the clerk in a few minutes. Quick question. Commonwealth Ave Phase 3 and 4, do we have any sort of a timeline with that? I know it's been on our list for maybe a decade at this point. And also, since we're really turning our attention to green infrastructure, it seems like that whole Commonwealth Ave corridor is an opportunity to really think about addressing the urban heat island effect we have, like planting more trees, making it more green, as well as, and I think then that's the question, how are we interacting with the other agencies? Because it's not just our show. The MBTA is involved and other state agencies are involved. Like, where are we at with that one?
Yeah, so I know this is something that came up on Tuesday as well. I don't have an exact timeline yet for kind of construction on that. I think that there's a lot of work. We have a very close partnership with the MBTA on all of their Green Line work that they're doing in particular on the B branch and the E branch, where they're doing a lot of work on that affects city streets. As a general sort of approach, we really try to use the T saying we need to reconfigure the right-of-way for our trains. We see that as an opportunity to also reconfigure the right-of-way for other benefits, for pedestrian safety, for bicycle access, for green infrastructure. And there is a capital line item in this year's budget which provides funds that the city can deploy to kind of get the add-ons, if you will, that might come along with those projects. Vinny, do you have any additional details on the timing of that? I know that was on my follow-up list from Tuesday, was to try to get you some more information on that.
I actually do not.
Okay, so we will get that to you.
I think I'd really like to keep in touch with that and keep pushing it, because I know it's an opportunity to do a lot of, and there's a lot of ADA accessible at Warren and at Chiswick. Like, there's elders and people with disabilities who it's a nightmare.
There are some short-term projects that the T is doing, because the FTA in their audit of the T identified, and I think Chiswick was one of them, locations where the accessibility was so poor that they mandated immediate action. So you will see some of those things happening in the short term.
And everyone else has asked about Hokies. I'm going to ask about Hokies. How many Hokies do we have for District 9? And also, just like even across the district, I'd love some information on how many Hokies each district has. And I'd like to make a case for getting some for Alston Village, Brighton Centre, Cleveland Circle, and Oak Square. Like, I don't know, we asked for 2 a couple of years ago. I know we didn't ever recruit. We didn't seem to recruit anybody, but it's really sort of an importance. These business districts are looking pretty shabby at times because there's a lot of litter and whatever, and we'd really appreciate.
Yep, absolutely, Councilor. You have one right now, and you have another one coming on board.
Oh, good.
Every day, I see it. I'm through there probably about 5:30 in the morning. It's Brighton Ave, Harvard Ave, from Com Ave down to Cambridge Street, and they do down through Union Square, and then they'll jump in with somebody else and do 311 requests throughout the district.
Very good, thank you. Thank you. I know how to reach you. I've got other questions, but thank you for accommodating my jumping the public testimony, and thank you all. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Councilor Braden. Now we'll move over to public testimony. When your name is called, please come down to one of the 2 podiums, state your name, neighborhood, and/or organization affiliations. Please speak into the microphone And please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Aziza Robinson, good night.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, City Council. Thank you, Committee. Department. I come here, my name is Aziza Robinson, good night. I am a daughter of Boston. When I say that, and I'm going to be slow, I might go over 3 minutes today. Sorry, I apologize in advance. I say that to say that my family arrived in Boston in the 1940s. My grandfather was one of the first of his 16 brothers and sisters that came after fighting in the war, so during the Great Migration. So I come here and I speak about Boston that the history has been passed down through my family. Also, my family has been greatly affected by the city's transportation decisions. One of the first major decision that was made by the city the state was to attempt to widen Melnia Cass Boulevard. When my grandfather's first property was taken by eminent domain by the city, and there is still no repair. Also, I am a child of the 80s, so I've experienced the neglect of the transportation city in our streets throughout the 80s and 90s, and having to navigate that as a child. I myself am also one of the founding members of the Friends of Melnia Cass Boulevard. Why was there a second attempt to widen Melnia Cass Boulevard? And why am I charged to fight for things that were already done to my family before I was born? I have no idea. I say that to say that I've been an advocate in this city for over 20 years. That is almost half my life. And I see same City Hall employees since the beginning of my organizing fight. I also was the artist in transit for the Fairmount Cultural Quarter Initiative, and one of the only individual artists that sat for the Art Pace Initiative, which activated the Fairmount Cultural Quarter from downtown to Mattapan. I've seen increased displacement used through the arts and transportation. I also was one of the first to curate the Fairmount train. But most recently, in Nubian Square, there has been a push to push art and transportation spaces. There's a 3-story image of my father in Nubian Square, a neighborhood that I cannot reside in, a neighborhood that is named after the Nubians. There's no reason why there is there's no reason why there is an over budgeting of transportation, but yet there are residents that cannot afford to live in spaces where they are either being honored, families are being honored, or have to fight to stay. I sit here and I've heard so many things that are extremely either triggering, traumatizing, or sad. This room is empty. Yet there is talk about traffic calming, which has caused effects in folks getting to work, bringing their children to school. But also you say that we live in one of the safest cities in the nation. Why are we spending our tax-paying dollars on traffic calming if we're one of the most safest pedestrian cities in the nation already? This is a statement that you said. There is many talk about traffic enforcement. Enforcement is traumatizing and triggering to the Black community. Also, talking about enforcement of ticketing, which will be revenue for the city. So taking out of our pockets, because I might double park on Blue Hill Ave to drop my daughter off at dance, but yet you want to take in the revenue and not do anything for our communities and continue to push us out. When we talk about Blue Hill Ave, we forget to talk about the abundance and beauty of black businesses that existed there in the 50s and 60s. And the fact that there's no effort, and that were burned down. They did not burn their own businesses down. There's such a stigma about the businesses on Blue Halab, about the black businesses on Blue Halab, and there is a rumor that said that we burnt down our own businesses. I can say we, because yes, my family did own a business on Blue Halab as well. Multiple businesses. Also, and I stand here not because I really want to, the social anxiety of even talking to folks here in City Hall, but the understanding the importance of being publicly heard is the reason why I'm here. I've been able to engage with folks like Vineet for over 15 years, but yet it is worse here in our city. Boston has the first public transportation system in the nation. Was this transportation system built by slaves? How were descendants of this labor benefiting? As you ponder that question, keep in mind there are organizers locally, nationally, and globally fighting for repair for a certain group of folks. And I will continue to show up. This is my life's work. I am a reparatory justice organizer, and I will continue to show up because reparations is in everything. And I won't always show up by myself. Every aspect of the city's structure has benefited from slave labor and has continued to fail to address the harm. Boston prides itself on being an innovation, gateway, and sanctuary city since our mayor, Marty Walsh, who is the most non-innovative politician that has ever presented that. And left you here to figure it out. I have seen the biggest shift in our city and push out of residents since Menino left. The one thing Menino did is he controlled and he made sure that he took care of his people. But Boston is just as broken down as our transit system. Old infrastructure with shiny new trains or shiny new things. Until the city, and I stand here again, and I will continue to ask the city councilors that represent different tribes from around the world first. When making decisions and asking questions about any aspect of city governments, stand firm on the history of harm. Do not use this harm as a mere benefit for small subsets of the community, but make radical change that will honor my ancestors, the American descendants of chattel slavery. Thank you.
Thank you, Aziza. Now we'll go back to council colleagues for second rounds of questioning. If you have second round, please put on your light. Councilor Mejia, the floor is yours.
And I have a 1 o'clock, but I wanted to be here for public testimony. It's important for us to listen to the people. I did have a question around the hiring, 56%, you said BIPOC, right? I think.
Depends on which part of the cabinet.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm always curious about what titles do these people have? Because one thing is to bring us in and the other is to actually let us grow, right? So I just want to name that for the record. Can you talk to me about that real quick?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead, Omar.
So our director of HR isn't here, so it really depends on which part of the cabinet. She did send me, for example, our biggest division, the highway division, is now, if you look at the management structure of the top 50 people in highway, majority BIPOC. And so it really depends on which part of the cabinet you're looking at, which segment, male or not male, BIPOC versus not BIPOC, but there is progress being made there.
Yeah, and so for those who are tuning in, if you could explain to us what BIPOC means.
Black, Indigenous people.
Okay. It would be great to have that data disaggregated a little bit further. I'd like to know how many are Black, how many are Latino.
Sure, we'll follow up with HR.
That would be great. And we passed an initiative here, the Fair Chance Act, specifically because we had heard from a lot of folks in the Public Works Department in particular that they were literally here for 30 years, and then they were ending up training their white counterparts to supervise them. And I know that's a workforce development issue, but I think it also is a leadership and management issue that I think is something for us to continue to hold ourselves accountable to, especially in the Public Works Department and transportation. I feel like a lot of people of color in particular, low-wage workers, tend to maintain that status. And I know that the city's working really hard on increasing our equity goals, but I just want to name for the record that we are still falling short when it comes to BIPOC people moving up the ladder in these specific departments. Regardless of what the data is, it seems like there's still a little bit of discontent from the restless, I guess, is what I'll say. But I have a 1 o'clock that I have to go to. So I will yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Durkin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I wanted to continue along my line of questioning, but I think what Councilor Mejia pointed out is really important. I did notice that there are no females in the top 10 of Public Works employees, and I think and I know that a lot of these are union jobs, so it's really about making sure that we are building a pipeline and possibility for everyone. I think for a lot of our city departments, when I was reviewing the book, they were going above and beyond sort of the 40% women that were outlined. And I know that we are doing what we can to create pathways for more women in this particular department. But I just think that is stark to know that there's not one woman in the top 10. As someone who owned a small business and was paid about 50% of what my male counterparts in the same business was, as a part of my history, that just rang true to me as something I've experienced in my work life, and I think a lot of women across the city see that. So we have to set the standard as an employer. So I really appreciate Councilor Mejia's points about diversity and building pipelines. Wanted to talk a little bit more about classification of employees in sort of their, particularly the Hokie salary. The minimum is $37,000 and the max is $44,000. I think I don't love the word Hokie. I wish there were like beautification partner or there was some other thing that we call them, but I do think that's very valued work, and that is a really low annual salary. So just pointing out that maybe some of our, as we all know, some of our issues with maintaining staff or because we need reclassification of those. So has there been progress made on that?
There has been some progress made on some of the areas of reclassification. There's still some stuff that is in discussions with the unions, which is part of that process. So I don't want to be too, I don't want to share stuff that sort of isn't ready for public consumption yet, but we have been working very closely with our People Operations Cabinet to identify to them the areas where we have the highest need and see the biggest gap in wages, and having them do more robust market analysis. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, some of our lowest paid jobs in our cabinet are some of the hardest work in the city, and the people who do those jobs well do an incredible amount of work for the wages that they get. We want to make sure that the classification for those positions is fair. Some of it is about relative to a market that maybe doesn't always reward hard work in the way that it should, but we also want to make sure that people who take those jobs and do those jobs well have pathways to grow into other roles and other responsibilities, that we as an employer are providing training and support and growth opportunities, because that, for many people who may start sort of at the lowest end of the ladder, there is opportunity for them to move up. And we have, many people in our leadership team who have followed that pathway, and we want to make sure that that is robust and that people have those opportunities.
And just adding, I think, in terms of bricklayers, for instance, I think we do pay less than market for like what that would, and obviously that's incredibly important to my district, is ensuring that our historic neighborhoods get the care and love that they need, but if we don't have the staff, and really grateful, just wanted to shout out Clarence Perkins for all of his work, and thank you so much. I think I just wanted to point out a couple other issues in the district. O'Connell Way in the West End, that particular way is going to be even more important given the redevelopment of the West End Library and the use there. There's also, I do think there's some jurisdictional issues between MGH property too, and so I'd love to sort those out, and just flagging that as something that is important. I also, I know that there's a lot of ramp work being done, so I wanted to sort of ask in generally what is sort of going on ramp-wise, especially in my district, this upcoming year. I know there's a lot of money set aside, and I know you did mention that in another hearing, but I know now with the full team here, wanted to see if there was a timeline for when those conversations might happen.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Can I get this one? Is this on? Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, so your district is receiving a good amount of work on curb ramps this season. I believe the meeting that we've been mentioning in the Back Bay that we're working with you in your office on involves a decent amount of repaving of streets in the Back Bay. And every time we do a curb-to-curb pave, we must upgrade all of those ramps. So there's going to be quite a few that we're going to be working on. And citywide, we basically have a strategy for how we're going to be improving up to current standards, 2,000 ramps, more than 2,000 ramps in this one construction season. And happy to share those details with you if you'd like.
Thank you. And I know the goal here is just to replace what we already have in a new way. And I think for our historic neighborhoods is obviously, and we know we've been in constant conversation about this, but just making sure we're replacing exactly what is there, given the architectural commissions and everyone else who weighs in on this stuff. And yeah, I think that was all I had. I think there's obviously a lot more, and I just want to thank you, Chief, for doing the thorough path walkthrough. I know that's been a priority of West End neighbors. There is an issue, it seems small, but it's outside of the Blackstone building in the West End. And I just wanted to, it's a huge issue because a lot of the people in the Blackstone, in order to live in the Blackstone, you have to have a disability. So making sure that everything is accessible in that area. We've basically been told because of the reconstruction of Blossom and all the work that's going to be done that it's not really worth redoing. But I just want to ask for some priority there, given the folks that live on that street. And I can send you a picture of that. But essentially, it's been made safe, but the made safeness has eroded away, and everyone in the neighborhood is. Anytime I walk on that block, someone's like, when are you fixing this? So, trying to make things safe while we are planning for bigger and more bold improvements.
We're happy to take a look at that, and understanding that, you know, we don't try to make changes right before we do reconstruction. There is still some time before anything's going to happen at the large scale on Blossom Street, and if there is a group of residents that are being negatively affected in accessibility, we will work on it and take care of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for your work and everything that you do to guide us through this process. And I know it has been sort of a laborious process to know who to contact, but I also want to thank Matt Warfield, who is not on this panel, but we've been in close contact on so many things regarding parking, and I'm just grateful to the whole cabinet. Though it is a behemoth to understand, I'm often going to the wrong person, and I'm thanking you guys for guiding me in the right way in my first 8 months in office. Thank you.
Thanks, Council.
Thanks, Councilor Durkin. Councilor Fernandez Anderson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, you know, just going back to what I know we already touched on this, and Councilor Mejia was in the chamber when we talked about it. There are plans to hiring more BIPOC, and your department actually is majority women, so that's not an issue at all. Is it not? It says 60.
There's a difference between Public Works and BTD, so it just depends which part of the cabinet.
Breakdown of employees. So this was not
That's the
overall?
parking clerk's office.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So what's your number
Which one, Public Works?
for your cabinet?
I'll have to pull that up. I don't have the cabinet-wide number right now.
Okay, no problem. So if I could get that through the chair, number, I guess, women and BIPOC population, and then also upper management, that'd be great, just in general, because there are some breakdowns of projections of people of color that you want to hire in a couple of places, and I guess it's maybe different departments, but it doesn't stipulate that here. Please provide overview of current fiscal performance measures, and it says, I see here in traffic division, they plan on increasing people of color by just five people. And then another one, and then in the parking clerk by about like double. So I guess there's just like
That's 5%.
Sorry?
That's 5%, not 5.
That's percentage?
That's percentage, yeah.
I see. Sorry, it doesn't, percentage of, okay, thank you. It doesn't read that way because in the title, I get it now, thank you. And so I guess if I can get through the chair sort of your plan overall, like when you're looking at it, I think people will have a more transparent, comprehensive way of understanding this. Like, how many people are you trying to hire? Where are the deficits, and what are the plans, and how are we moving toward that? And I guess explanations of programs that you can implement for whether it's like workforce or development or any types of compensation of trainings and things like that, considering equitable programs that would actually support people to get to the next level. How do we supplement that, right? So if you have those plans, I'm sure you've thought about it, talked about it, what does it look like, and can we see it? In terms of your numbers, and between permanent employees, I'm just double checking if it's like overall. So for traffic division, for example, and I guess these are broken down by different departments. You've expended about 13 million, but then you have 7 million left, and we only have about 2 months in the fiscal year. Most likely you'll have a surplus. You're going to have surpluses probably in unemployment compensation, which is like nothing. In utilities, you're going to have, it looks like you're going to have a surplus in building structures and repairs. Is this all like a capacity issue? Like you don't have the people to do the job, so then the money is sitting there, and then you have to repurpose it?
Sometimes, it depends, right? So for the employee line, it's usually about vacancies. And so we're currently working with the budget office to spend that down very quickly. The numbers you have are as of April 1st, I think. And so a lot of these lines are being spent down right now. A lot of year-end projects. As long as the goods and services are delivered by June 30th, sometimes the payments are behind. Like if this is as of April 1st, sometimes it's really as of March 1st because we haven't paid the bills, let's say for April, that kind of thing. But yes, in contracted services, sometimes the surplus may be because of capacity, although not usually, because
Yeah, like for example, in automotive equipment, there's no way of predicting how much equipment or fixing or whatever you need to do, right, in terms of repairs.
well, you know, the age of the fleet is the biggest predictor and the usage. And I do know that we are sometimes behind on paying those bills or paying ourselves really, because we do a lot of that work in-house. So it depends on the line.
So when you have surpluses, which you most likely will, and it's going to be in at least over $1 million from my estimation, when you repurpose with OBM, it says here that you repurpose with OBM. How are those decisions made, and how can we make it transparent to the council so that, because we're approving a thing based on allocations, but then a change will take place? How will you then communicate that with the council?
That's a good question. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's a question I would maybe ask our colleagues in OBM to give you an answer on, because it is a sort of citywide kind of situation. Typically, though, when we do have surplus that is getting reallocated, what we're doing is we're reallocating it against spending that would have otherwise occurred in a different fiscal year. So, you know, as an example, we those pedestrian delineators that get knocked down, we might use surplus money to buy an inventory of those so we have them available when we need them. That's really just shifting spending from one year to the next. It's not sort of a whole new program or project that would typically get done with that kind of money. But I think OBM can probably provide you a more comprehensive answer for both how they make those decisions citywide and how they then communicate those changes.
If they're in, thank you so much, very helpful. If they're in contract, then we know that you have to tell us. But if it's an operating and OBM makes that decision under the mayor, then you guys don't have to tell us. Is there a possibility that maybe working together on advocating, there's some surplus money, can we look into like special projects that we can move that to, repurpose that to?
Again, I'd wanted to defer to the OBM folks. You know, really, they will sometimes ask us for recommendations based on you know, what we know our upcoming needs are, but they ultimately are the decision makers about what gets authorized with that surplus money, and I think would be the best people to speak to how the role of the council in shaping that.
Outside of job fairs, is there anyone in your cabinet that is specifically doing outreach or any type of workforce? Are you working with the workforce department at all to connect constituents or citizens of Boston to jobs?
There are, you know, some of the programs we mentioned. So, for example, the partnership that our street lighting division established with Madison Park is an example of, you know, a department or division taking their own initiative to kind of build a workforce pipeline program. We do have good relationships with the workforce development team. We also work a lot with our people ops team, which is developing sort of citywide programs, things like job fairs and outreach approaches that allow us to get in front of broader audiences of potential folks. And I did mention we added a recruiter last year who is working broadly on recruiting across the cabinet, but that gives us some additional capacity to make sure, you know, we have somebody who can be a friendly face at the job fair, along with some of the staff who can talk about the work, those kinds of things.
That's exciting to think about so many openings and the opportunity to be able to connect people with jobs. Like, I think it's the answer to all problems, honestly. But then again, you know, I'm a workaholic, like many of you here, so maybe that's not the solution. But I look forward to learning more about that and hopefully being helpful, advocating for my constituents to be connected. Let's talk about Blue Hill Ave really quick. Can you just, you know, on record, give us an update where we are, where we're moving forward?
Sure, happy to do that. So, starting next month, we will be launching a new community engagement phase. The idea here is to work block by block and engage immediate abutters as well as kind of surrounding communities. And the way we'll be doing this, there'll be 9 separate pop-ups along the entire corridor, as well as 2 organized forums. And the schedule for those will come out in the next few weeks, and we'll be encouraging people to join us at those meetings. The purpose of those meetings is to have a discussion at a very local level as to how we should allocate the street right-of-way between parking, travel lanes, maybe a bike lane, how wide the sidewalk should be. All of those decisions we think are best taken hand in hand with the people who have businesses along that side or live there. So that whole process will take about for the rest of the year. All of this will mean that sometime next year we'll be able to begin a detailed concept design for the corridor.
How are you accessing, or how are you giving this information to business owners?
So there are flyers. So we are working with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. We have flyers in several languages that will be handed out. We are using social media. We are literally walking up and down the corridor and contacting people and letting them know that this series of meetings is going to be taking place. It's on our website. We're doing a mailing to each and every address along the entire corridor. I can't remember how wide it goes, but we'll be doing that mailing. It's in the thousands.
Mattapan Square to
all
Grove
the
Hall?
way to Grove Hall. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you live in the area, you'll get something in your mail.
Okay. It doesn't cover Warren, right? Warren is in Roxbury Resiliency. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. I guess just a quick question about I will continue to talk about Blue Hill because that's, a huge thing. Thank you so much. Quick thing, metrics in terms of employment, and I'm sure you have charts everywhere, and you're like, I need people, I need more people. HR, is that a question for HR in terms of, figuring out like where we are, metrics and projections of who we want to hire and demographics and all of that?
I think it's probably a combination of data that we have as a cabinet, data that's stored centrally. So, if you can kind of detail what piece of information you're looking for, and there is actually some stuff up on the website. The city has its employment demographics dashboard as well. If you can detail what you're looking for, we'll through the IGR process and all that work to get you answers from whoever has the information.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me extra time. I will look through the website, through IGR, get more information. I like to follow it closely. I like to be helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Fernandez-Anderson. Council Coletta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I will be brief. I know that we're close to the end here. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. So just first of all, saying that I see the progress over the last 2 years of internal processes and operational changes. So thank you so much for your leadership. It starts at the top. So Chief, thank you first, and everybody here, this entire team. I wanted to call out something that I've come up with in partnership with the community. So we have some of the best minds in the city, but some of the best ideas come from the community, and we were trying to figure out a way to streamline or make the street sweeper system and trash truck system more efficient and better for our residents. And so we were talking about how MBTA buses have trackers on them. You could literally see them going up and down your streets. And I've brought this up to a couple of people. I don't even remember who I brought it up to, but trying to see what this might look like in practice, and trying to integrate the system so that folks who are living in Charlestown, for example, shout out to John Caldwell, who came up with this idea. It's difficult for him to understand when to move his car. There's very limited space around the streets, and so if he could see where the street sweeper was at, it would be easier for him, and he has young children. It's just very difficult. Same goes for the trash trucks. when folks are putting trash out onto the streets, we know the longer that it's there, the longer that the rats could get at it with organic waste and all of that. So wondering if there's been any discussions about this, if you're open to it, what that might look like a partnership would do it, and if it's a capital investment, if it's an operations investment.
I think we do have a lot of tracking on our vehicles and our contract vehicles to allow us to know where they are for monitoring performance and service. There is some history with this. Back in the day, the Public Works Department worked with Do It to do a real-time tracker for plows, so people could see all the plowing activity of the city. It's certainly a conversation we can have. I think we would want to be careful about, with certain kinds of operations, right? What we give a time frame because there is a lot of variability in the day. One day we may have a truck that breaks down, and so the route may shift, and so we would hate to see somebody in the position of saying, well, the route always comes down this street and then makes the turn, and I didn't put my trash, I put my trash out, but it was at the wrong time because we ran a different route that day. So we just want to be careful. Obviously, operational transparency can be very helpful. It can also set expectations for consistency that maybe always don't align with exactly how it works in the real world, and so we'd want to just be really thoughtful if we were to explore that, but happy to have a further conversation.
No, that's fair, and my response would be like pulling the curtain back from city government and showing just how messy it can be, and while we try to be perfect, we are not, and it just sets the expectation for residents moving forward as to what the problem issues are. So that's
operational transparency will not get your car out of the tow lot.
It
so
won't.
I want to
It
make
won't.
sure we're not setting folks up.
No, I see that, and thank you for your answer. And then my last, not a question, but just encouragement, is that I think we have some really good news coming down the pike on food cart regulations and programs. I won't get ahead of anybody, but just asking for collaboration in that way. I think last year and the year before, there's been awesome things that are happening in the city, and we could do some really cool stuff like block parties and various other special events, but that requires on the back end and internally expediting permits. And so my understanding is that there have been some bottlenecks within the permitting department in particular, not for anyone's fault, but just because the amount of work has just been increased. And so just asking for, when you're looking at public spaces for these food carts to be there, to just consider how incredible of a program this is, and then also how important this is for folks to do this and get their carts up and running so that they could have economic mobility towards a brick and mortar. So just putting that out there and look forward to your partnership on that in the coming months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. Again, thank you for being here. I know there's a bill at the State House that will allow for cameras on buses to enforce bus lane violations. If this was to get approved, can you just talk to me, your thoughts on how you guys will implement this? Would that mean you'll have someone increase in positions? Would this mean more revenue for the city of Boston? Just want to get an idea of what implementation would look like if this bill was to be passed.
Yeah, so I think so thanks for asking that question. Photo-based enforcement is something that we support in general, but it has to be done right, because done the wrong way, it can result in inequitable fines being levied in our community. It can result in civil liberties violations, and so we are conceptually supportive. The bill has generally been supportive of the bill that is currently being considered, and think there are opportunities for photo-based enforcement beyond just bus lanes, although that is a perfectly good place to start. In general, I believe that the bus lane enforcement bill would primarily have the enforcement responsibilities be the province of the MBTA. They do operate cameras on their buses today, not for enforcement purposes, but those would be used to help keep bus lanes clear. There may be some locations where there are fixed bus lane cameras, or cameras like at bus stops or in locations where they're mounted onto public infrastructure, and so the city would potentially play a role in that. I think were there to be a approval of photo enforcement for other types of violations, for safety issues in particular, many other jurisdictions have had great success with speed and red light cameras. We would want to think through an appropriate public process to get input from the community about where and how to deploy those types of cameras. We certainly hear about hotspots from many people in the community today, places where they regularly see people violating the law in ways that create safety issues, and so those would be a starting place, but we would want to make sure that any city-led deployment of cameras was informed by a lot of community input and a lot of conversation about how to make sure we're doing it right and how to make sure we're doing it in a fair way. I will say from our perspective as a department, we are always working to prioritize school zones as areas other areas around public infrastructure like libraries, community centers, and parks as places that we try to focus our energy. And so we would likely come into those conversations advocating for safety-oriented photo enforcement to start in those places where we have a more vulnerable population, and we hear regularly about the challenges people experience moving safely in those places. But this is getting way ahead of the state legislature, who has not yet advanced that bill. Anything you want to add?
No, I think the other piece is that what happens, right? If somebody is double parked or parked in a bus lane or a bike lane, and so the software, from what I understand, will ping you that the camera spotted a violation, and so that ping goes to the enforcement team, and then they know that they should show up at that location and move that car along, or give it a ticket and move along.
Okay, so there has to be someone on the scene to write the ticket. The ticket does not get...
There's multiple approaches, but there is a bill that would allow for automated ticket issuance that is being considered now. In addition, yeah.
Awesome.
So,
and then this will make a side bus lane operate more efficiently or faster?
Yes, I mean, this is, there are places in the city where our side running bus lanes work very well. If you look at Huntington Ave, for example, by the MFA and Wentworth, right, the side running bus lanes, there's not a lot of demand for curbside parking there. The side running bus lanes generally function quite well. There are places like Brighton Ave in Alston where the side running bus lane is nearly non-functional because of the frequent double parking. So one of the potential benefits of this is reducing the amount of double parking. I was in New York City a couple of weeks ago, and they have a long-standing camera-based enforcement program, and their bus lanes work well. They stay clear. You see people look for a place to park. You see them kind of pull in to see, is there a space I can get into? And if not, they don't just get out of their car. They leave the bus lane. They go around the block until they find a place to pull over that is safe and appropriate. And so, we do see a lot of evidence nationally that there's value in this. But again, the devil is in the details and making sure the program is rolled out.
There's still a lot of friction in the bus lane, which is if it's a curbside bus lane, there'll still be a lot of friction of people coming in and out.
Okay.
Yeah, there are contexts where center running bus lanes will always be preferable for both a bus performance perspective and a rider experience perspective, but there are places where side running bus lanes can work that better with photo enforcement.
Better enforcement. That's good to hear. Just speaking of, you brought up schools. One of the things I've heard from daycares is they don't get the same signage as schools, but they're also doing walks with our toddlers, with our young people. Have we thought about how can we make, pedestrian safety for our youngest more visible with the use of signage?
Yeah, so without diving too much into the details of arcane signage regulations, the decisions about the formal definition of school zones are defined in the federal guidelines called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It delegates a lot of the specific eligibility criteria to the states to determine what particular areas can be designated formally as school zones. In Massachusetts, MassDOT's guidance on this has limited school zone designations to primary and secondary schools that are overseen by DESI. It does not include the preschools and other educational facilities overseen by EEC. So we have been advocating with MassDOT for them to adopt a broader definition of what would qualify as a school under the school zone program. Now, even without school zones, there is the ability to create what are known as slow zones or safety zones. These are zones that have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits that have much less restrictive criteria. What you do not get with these is the ability to put like a flashing school zone sign that has the speed limit in it, but you can put speed signage that reduces the speed limit and that has a sort of a little bit of extra kind of yellow warning, safety zone type signage on it. There is some benefit to these kinds of lowering of speed limits, but we find that when that is done solely without any other changes to infrastructure, that those benefits are very limited. The city's reduction, the implementation of a citywide 25-mile-an-hour speed limit did very slightly reduce average speeds in the city, but fundamentally, the design of the street is what dictates how fast people drive. If it's a fast street, they're going to drive fast irrespective of what the sign says. But we are working to try to beef up that toolkit and our capacity to deploy those tools, particularly in places that we know are sensitive for young people.
And then looking at ARPA funds, America's Best Biking City and Walkable City each have over $7 million left unspent. Any challenges on making sure that gets out the door by the end of 2026? And how do you plan on doing that? Because otherwise, by the end of this year, we have to, I believe, reallocate it.
Sure. So in short, we do plan to spend all those funds. I think primarily we have a lot of bike lane networks and projects that we're planning to bid out later this summer.
And do you have like a list?
We do. It's in development, but
okay.
I'll defer to Deputy Chief Campbell on. You talking about bike lanes?
Well, how you plan on spending down?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I do just want to say, there is a central coordination of the ARPA funding through, through the finance team, and so we are working very closely with them to make sure that they are holding us accountable to make sure we have a plan, and we're providing regular reporting to them about how we intend to spend these funds. So I just don't want to get ahead of how they want to report that back to the council as a city, because obviously this issue touches multiple departments beyond just us, but
Right.
we are working to make sure that all of those funds are obligated and spent according to the schedule.
Absolutely, and I know we just want to make sure that we're part of the process because you guys came to us as a council with these proposals, so we want to be a part of, if it's not getting spent down, the reallocation process.
Sure.
There was a comment on the RFI on page 34 about 200 and 300 frontage roads being the biggest infrastructure challenges that BTD has. Can you expand on that more, and how do we plan on coming up with a solution?
So this is the facilities.
Yeah, particularly the parking enforcement facility at 200 Frontage Road is in need of some capital repairs and deferred maintenance. From everything from the structure itself to dealing with some of the coastal flooding issues that inundate that lot. So we're working on that, and we will continue to kind of chip away at those as funding becomes available.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention 400 Frontage Road for our Public Works Department, which is getting a new roof badly needed, but also which has similar challenges. Not new. These are, have been reported on and there's been analysis done over many years about. But as others have noted, we, I think, admirably tend to prioritize investments in things that deliver direct, immediate impacts to constituents, and sometimes that comes at the expense of delaying some investments in our own facilities. We obviously are not looking for luxury, but we work very closely with the budget office to make sure that we are putting strategic investments in the capital budget that allow us to continue to deliver those services and to provide a measure of dignity and comfort for our employees who are doing that work, and we want to continue to make those investments.
Awesome. And then the missed trash request. I know you guys are targeting for 13,000, but it seems like year over year, it's been over 16,000. How do we plan on bringing it down to 13,000, 3,000 now?
Dennis, can I call you down to talk about that? While he's on his way down, I will just say, right, the percentage, the city prides itself on the quality of our trash collection service. It is not perfect, but a percentage of missed trash requests as a total of the number of households that we pick up every day is extremely small. And I think Dennis can speak a little bit more to the details of some of the data and how we approach this issue.
Yeah, we deal with roughly probably about 30 to 50 missed trash cases daily. That's probably on average, but we pick up 70,000 homes a day. So percentage-wise, that's very, very small of what we're dealing with. A lot of them tend to be cases that come out to the street late after the truck already has gone by, and we're working with new technologies now, GPS technologies, Samsara technologies, route running types things that we're looking at to implement in the city that's going to help us with all of those cases.
Oh, so more technologies being
Yeah, we're looking at technology options. We have one GPS software that we're working with very closely right now that's helping us kind of track our trucks to see where our trucks are on the streets. A little bit about what Council Cleta was talking about route optimization and like getting there eventually, but we're looking at newer technologies that they're implementing in other cities that can help us with those types of cases.
Awesome.
And this lets us, do a little bit more of that accountability, right? Because it's, every 311 we get is, they didn't pick up my trash, but sometimes when we look at the data, we're like, well, your trash wasn't out there, or we might find that a trash pickup really did get missed. So we're really trying to make sure that we have visibility into when and how missed trash happens so that we can always work to make that small percentage even smaller.
Perfect. And then something I always hear from my constituents is have the trash service, make sure that they put it not only so that people can walk, clear the sideway, but make sure that they put it the way that they saw it, right? Like put it back nice and neat, not nice and neat, but in a respectable way. Yeah, I know. I'm just advocating for my constituents.
Yeah, it's in our contract with Capital Waste that they have to put it back on the curb, not blocking the curb, not accessing the curb. We do get complaints and we address them with our contractor all the time about making sure that sidewalks are accessible and that they put the trash bins back as the way they found them. So, and it's in our contract that they need to do that.
Awesome. We have $500,000 in unused funds for the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials. Can you talk to me to what happened to the program?
Hey, Dennis, I think we just got a charm question. Maybe you can take a seat down here. Yeah, we are working on you're getting your steps in now. We are working on rolling out the charm program. It's just a question of the $500,000.
Yeah, so right now we're trying to identify space within the city on city property to design the Center for Hard Recycle Materials. So I've been working closely with Nick and the Transportation Department of identifying a site. At that point, we're going to put out an RFP for a design consultant to design that particular center at the site that we select.
Awesome. And this wasn't ARPA, was this ARPA dollars, the $500,000?
Yeah, there is ARPA money for that.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, are we going to meet that timeline?
Yeah, we've been working very closely. We should have probably an RFP out this summer that would allow us to meet. We have to have a contract in place by the end of this calendar year,
right,
which we plan to do.
Awesome. And then lease debt purchases, FY18, over budgeted by $283,000, FY19, $208,000. And then the years after that, $500,000 in FY21, $400,000 in FY22, in FY23, $500,000. However, I believe we increased it in this budget. Can you tell me why the increase when we have been historically over budgeted for the last 5 years?
You're talking about the lease purchase budget?
Lease purchase budget for PWD.
Yeah. So this is the budget line where we buy a lot of our big equipment. Oftentimes, equipment cycles vary. So we may try to buy a large set of equipment one year, bigger packers or whatnot, and then other years, those things are not needed, and so we'll buy the smaller pickup trucks, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. So I don't know, I haven't looked at the historicals as much as the current, but we can get back to you on the specifics on why this year's is more.
Okay, but no plans as of now for more purchases from last year, right?
Oh, in terms of the existing budget for this fiscal year?
Right.
No, I think in terms of current spending, sometimes the spending for those happens towards the end. We were able to make all the purchases that we had budgeted. It just depends on the lead time for the vehicles and when we get them.
No, I'm sorry. So for next year, right? So FY25, you guys are not planning, you guys don't have any plans for any big purchases?
We do have plans for a sizable set of purchases for next year, FY25. We're also working with the budget office to try to do some of those this year with our end of year surplus.
Our Robbie Pardo and our central fleet team maintains inventories of vehicles, their ages, their condition, and that gets used every year to make a plan for vehicle refresh and purchases. When does it no longer make sense financially to maintain a vehicle or functionally to maintain a vehicle versus replacing it? So we have a very structured program for how we evaluate and make those decisions, and then that kind of rolls into the budget through lease purchase, that line item.
Awesome. And then last year, you guys were able to close down one of the streets for Halloween in the Melville Park area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the police officers loved it, the community loved it. Can we think about creating this as more of like a program, sort of like we do, like Love Your Block, or that sounds like you thought about it?
Sure. So, yeah, so last year we had a very successful, what was really just an expansion of our existing kind of block party permit program, but targeted for Halloween. And I think we did over 40 events citywide last year. So we'll be pushing out those opportunities again with our new kind of streamlined Play Street permit process, which is the process that includes block parties. But yeah, again, that was really successful. I think we increased the number of those events by almost 40% from the prior year.
The ask for the council is just to, as that information gets distributed, please make sure neighbors know and know early, because we did have a few stragglers last year that we managed to make work, but certainly for everyone's planning purposes, the earlier we get those applications, the better in terms of being able to turn that around and plan.
Absolutely. And I know Love Your Block, like they have a website. If that's something that you guys could create that we could point our constituents to, I think that will also help in terms of making sure that people are on time and getting their applications in.
Great idea.
Yeah, great.
On pages 10 through 11 of the RFI, you spell out 30 long-term unfilled vacancies. This is on the operating of heavy machinery. How are you marketing to fill those positions, and how are we going to be covering for the vacancies? And then also, how many of those positions did we hire last year?
I don't have the answer on how many we hired last year. We did promote a few internally, so we have our own driving school.
Okay.
So as a Hokie comes in, you know, if they have a license, we quickly move them up to MEO. From there, they can enter. We have about a 6-week, Robbie, CDL driving school. We have our own driving instructor. While we take them while they're working, teach them how to operate the truck. We'll take them on the road test, get them their license, basically walk them through. So we are able to overcome some of those vacancies that way. The problem is other municipalities close by or other places pay a little bit more, so they quickly will move on, you know, to another.
How much do we pay for the heavy machine, that position?
Yeah, we can get you that information.
Okay,
I
was just
the
wondering.
salary scale off the top of my head.
Yeah, but overcoming the vacancies, obviously, if it's a winter event, you know, a large-scale winter event, we'll bring in more contract pieces. If it's just our internal operations, we'll cover it with overtime.
Awesome. And let me just take a look. Just go through this. That's it. Yeah. No, I think that is. Oh, this is the last one. The last one. I think 7 out of our 10 top vendors are out of state, right? Are there any contracts, or are we doing more of a outreach to Boston companies to get more contracts in the hands of Boston companies?
Definitely. I think this is an area of increasing interest and focus for us. We are working closely with the Supplier Diversity Office. which I used to be a member of, to make sure all of our contracts are being advertised locally. Whenever we have the opportunity, we are engaging and using the sheltered market. We actually have a contract out right now for landscaping on Melnia Cass. So recruiting local diverse businesses is very important, both on the smaller contracts, but also on our bigger contracts. It just depends on the contractor availability and which department we're looking at, but yeah.
So the goal next year is to get it down to 6 out of 10?
That's not Public Works or BTD that you're looking at?
I think this is BTD.
BTD. So it really depends on what those contracts are, right? I mean, the largest contracts in BTD are like software contracts for parking, the pavement markings contracts. It may be difficult depending on who's bidding or who can bid on those. But yes, that's always the goal.
Many of the marketplaces that we procure in are very limited in terms of the competition that they offer. In some cases, they're functionally monopolies. And so, we're always, when we have a competitive marketplace with a variety of supplier options, we're always going to use all the tools we have to try to recruit local and diverse businesses. But in some cases, for example, parking enforcement software, it's not a market that we can, have the flexibility to only shop local. So we try to be very aware of where we can do that and use and prioritize local businesses.
And then happy to hear that Kate, the green infrastructure position, is on board. One of my questions around this, I know that this is a forward-thinking job, right? Like going forward, but is there any opportunity to look backwards in terms of some of the infrastructure that was installed at like Morton Street, on how we make that more green, or some of the bump outs in Roxbury to see if we can make that more green? Any thought on going backwards?
Yeah, there is. And yeah, Kate, do you want to talk about some of the things you're doing?
By the way, Councilor, the heavy MEO entry level is $20 an hour.
Oh, $20, okay.
It goes up to 26.
That was pre-contract.
Correct. This is the old rate.
The old rate.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, just to respond to that, a wonderful question. We've identified a number of locations that were done, intersections specifically that were completed in the past where a paved bump out was installed, and we are converting those from those kind of paved areas to green vegetated features. We're actually doing the first conversion, 2 of them actually in Mattapan this spring.
Oh, nice.
And then we have additional conversions planned in Grove Hall, Dorchester, there's one in Hyde Park. They're kind of spread throughout the city. And so we're going to continue transitioning those intersections that were previously paved, and then moving forward, because of a policy we put in place in October of 2022, we won't be building any more of them. So from now on, they will be green infrastructure bump outs of some kind.
Awesome, great
Thanks.
to hear.
Yeah.
And I just want to give a big thank you to some more people from your team: Para, Clarence, Norman, Francis, Rocco, Eric, Robert, Chris, William, Mike, Patrick, and Carl, all people who are all responsive, not only to me, but to the constituents. So I just want to thank them. I also now want to thank central staff, my team, my council colleagues, our police officers, and everyone who was here today who gave public testimony. And with that, the hearing on dockets number 0670 through 0678 is adjourned.